Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast.
This is brought to you by, well, you.
If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. This is Sacred Symbols Cross Defining Duke, and I'm here with the whole Duke Cross Sacred family. Thank you for being here with us. Let's go around the horn. Chris Raygun, my son. How are you today? Confusing everyone because you're wearing your ODST hat. We're trading you. Surprise!
Yeah.
Future considerations.
Future considerations.
Yeah, it's a draft. I'm doing all right. Just getting back into the swing of things. Spent a lot of mostly yesterday writing YouTube stuff, so I'm excited to just have that time again.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Good to see you. See the mop still in the background?
Yeah. This office is in the middle of I'm trying to actually figure out what I want to do with the space now that I actually have the time to think about it.
It's the new bottle of Pledge. For people that might remember, I had a bottle of Pledge on my shelf that I didn't move for a year.
Yeah.
And it became just like this thing. And then I turned it upside down at some point and no one noticed. So bunch of fucking slackers out there. Dustin Furman, executive producer. How are you today, my friend?
Doing all right. Just went on a nice little dog walk. And let me tell you, I don't put enough importance on going outside, even if it's just for a little bit. It can really refreshen your day, change your mood around. And so
Definitely.
It's a nice, not that usually when it's nice out, we take Frisk on walk every day. But right now with this Western PA weather, when it's too cold, she'll just stop in the middle of a walk and just kind of be like, I'm done. I'm not going any further. But right now it's just warm enough. So It's nice to be outside for a little bit and now be back inside with the gamers talking about gamer stuff. So.
Yeah, totally. I'm outside. People. I am a very insular person. I don't like leaving my house very often, but it should really be I don't like leaving my neighborhood because I'm walking around bandying about all the time. Yesterday, we live across the street from this couple, and they asked us. I was just mowing the lawn, and you guys want to have some driveway beers right now? It's 2 PM. I'm like, yeah, fuck it. Then I got drunk. All right, Maddie. How are you today, my friend? Welcome. We were talking before this show. For those that are watching the video, you're wearing your Oilers shirt. Your Western Conference NHL team as the playoffs are in full swing. I got to say, hockey playoffs are nice.
Different.
Where you just got game after game after game after game every night. And I have it on TV in the background and, muting the commercials, of course, can't stand the commercials, but it's been fun to watch. The Islanders, as of we're recording this, they might not even survive the publishing of the show because they might be knocked out tonight, but how are you today, my friend?
I'm doing okay. I was very cocky. Our last Duke episode was talking about my Rangers. They were up 1-0 at the time. I said they're looking really good. Mm-hmm. They were up 2-0 by the time the show went live, and I was feeling like I wasn't the jinx. But since then, they've lost 2 in a row, and it was just Game 4 was really tough to watch. That was a dead team out there, and as a New York sports fan, who's not a Yankee fan, by the way, I know a dead team when I see one, and I'm not feeling too good about our odds moving deeper, but. I have been an Oilers fan since 2013, so I'm feeling good about them, right? They're battling the Kings, which, according to my NHL bracket, I had it going 7. I said that's going to be their toughest challenge yet. Otherwise, I think they're going to go and win it all. It's just about getting past those Kings, who just seem to have their number. But otherwise, playoff sports, they bring out the existential side of me, I was saying, but I'm doing well despite that. What I will say is I at times, the playoff sports are tough for me because, especially when I got a lot of work to do, I want to watch them, but with hockey playoffs, man, I don't know, Colin, if you do the same thing, but bro, when the puck starts moving, I lean forward a little bit and I just can't take my eyes off the screen until the play is dead. I am in a trance every time. So I have to make sure I limit how much I do watch because I'll just lose my whole night. That's how much I enjoy it.
And the same. I like just having it on and engaging with it. And any game is interesting. Any series is interesting. I have been watching and really clued into the Oilers Kings series because I find that such an interesting matchup just for the history of the Oilers and the Kings together. Yeah, with the Gretzky trade and all that in 1988. That was a seminal, maybe the most famous trade in hockey history.
Oh yeah.
And so when I see those two teams together, it just invokes that Marty McSorley era, that Kelly Hrudey era, Luc Robitaille. And then that really great Oilers team that was basically traded to the Rangers to win the Rangers their Stanley Cup in 1994. I had to say it. I'm sorry. I had to do it.
Dustin.
It's okay.
Dustin. What the
What?
fuck is
What?
the fuck is going on?
Sorry, I tuned out for a second. I actually forgot where I was.
By the way, quick tease, because quick tease before we get to Cog and introduce him. Quick tease about Constellation coming up. I specifically requested Chris and Dustin together because I have a sports-related Constellation that I want to get going on Friday. It's going to be a quiz, and I will present you with the parameters of it when we get there. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's
So
not
what you're
something I
saying
would be
is,
able.
should I have a quiz that embarrasses
embarrasses
you for Constellation? I can reverse. You've cued me in now because I didn't know what you were trying to do, but now.
Yeah. Well, it's not. I don't think it's going to embarrass you. I think it's going to be fun. You know what?
Okay.
I'm not even going to say because I don't want you guys to know what it is
Just
yet.
a little bit like a fool. It'll be fun.
Yeah, you just you're a clown. Make us laugh.
All right.
Cog, how are you today, my friend? Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. A little tired. A lot going on. 300 episodes that 2 of you were a part of. So salute to both of you for
congratulations.
For pulling up. Thank you. Just moving around, man. It's just been busy. A lot of craziness. But got a chance to sneak in some gaming. But I've been playing Ghostwire Tokyo. Really digging it.
Me too. I love that game. I think that game's super underrated.
Yeah, man. I'm getting my hand signals on them. I'm upgrading my powers. I'm dealing with this host that wants my body, but I'm forming a relationship. So I'm liking it, man. I'm liking it.
I'm really happy to hear that because that game, I've been on that game's jock pretty hard since it came out just in that. And I told the story about how I felt so bad that the game, and I almost never feel this way. I felt so bad that no one was talking about the game in a positive way, or seemingly no one was. I wrote to Pete Hines, which I almost never do. And I'm friendly with him. He wrote back to me or whatever. I'm like, I just wanted you to know, I think Ghostwire is great.
Yeah.
And I don't know why everyone's just like ignoring it and pretending it's not. Yeah. What I like about it is it's like really, it's the same thing that made that Avalanche Mad Max game interesting in 2015, which is like just the emptiness of it. Mm-hmm. It's part of it. Like it's like you're on a movie set. And yes. I think it's really interesting.
A lot of tension. And then once it opens up and the verticality kicks in, I was really getting across, going from rooftop to rooftop, getting the powers, and just hearing the stories of the side quests really started to captivate me. So I like where it's going.
Yeah, I platinumed it. I thought it was awesome. Make sure if you want to go for 1,000 gamer score, you got to harvest those ghost parades, or you'll be there for fucking ever, which is what happened to me. But just letting you know. All right. My friends, I regaled everyone before we began about what here on the show about what we wanted to talk about, but to clue you guys in, want to touch on both things, Xbox and PlayStation. I like to focus a little more on Xbox on these shows because I feel like this is inherently a Sacred Symbols Plus episode, and so I think what's most valuable about it is hearing from the Xbox guys about things too. But we'll get on all sorts of different topics. I wanted to start with Redfall because it's imminent. It's in like 10 days, I think, from when we're recording, 9 days, something like that. I'm wondering how you guys feel about it. I see that commercials are starting to play on TV, which is good. So some sort of belief in it. I've always said, and Maddie, we'll begin with you, I guess, is I've always said the game looks kind of cool. Now, I have a bias towards vampires, like hardcore. I just think vampires are dope, and that's always going to increase my interest in things. But I think it looks fun. Arcane's quality, but people are really focused on this 30 frames thing. I do think that's a snafu. I don't understand how that's even a thing at all on Xbox Series X. I wonder if they'll overcome it. I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are now that the game's imminent. Do you think it's going to hit?
Yeah, I guess if I were to start with a predicted Metascore, and I'm saying this before any possible review copy lands in my lap, I'm probably thinking low to mid 80s. That's where I think it's going to fall. Just based off what I played in the hands-on, we've had a lot of time to think about it since. For me, I feel like with Redfall, the thing that's missing is the suite of powers. It just feels like they took me and Sav talked about it on our DDU episode with Cog as well. That it feels like they took Corvo's ability wheel and then just broke it up amongst 4 characters. And that sucks because what was cool about Corvo is you could just do 1,000,001 different things in that level. Whereas now, if you're playing solo, you're really just limited to 2 abilities and that's it. And it feels more like a hero shooter then because of that than what a typical Arcane does. And that'll jive more with people. But for me, going in, I would say my expectations truly are, because when I went into Deathloop famously, like I went in thinking I'm going to love this, like it's Arcane. And it just felt to me worse than anything they had ever made. It wasn't a bad game. I don't think Arcane's really made a bad game, but with Redfall now, I know because I've went hands on, like, oh, this is pretty radically different in a lot of ways from what Arcane typically does. Where I'm kind of going in with lower expectations of like, I don't know if I'm actually gonna love this, but of course, when I review it, I still got to be aware, what I may not love, others will. So how that goes with me, I don't know. But I feel like, the 30 FPS thing, I think that's going to hurt the conversation of the game, because it's going to be let's say it is really good, it exceeds expectations. It's definitely going to be that, yeah, but 30 FPS. It's going to be the thing brought up in to throw in the face of the game's success. But, I'm glad they're marketing it. I'm glad they're getting behind it. Me and Cog both said when we talked about it on Defining Duke that when that 30 FPS news dropped, that they were going to probably just stick with it and launch with it, especially because right after they dropped the news, they just 3 hours later had a new tweet promoting Redfall and stuff. So it kind of felt like they were just like, let's get the news out of the way, let's lock it in. But yeah, moving into launch, kind of feeling neutral, middle, a little slightly sour on it. I'm not going to lie, because just based off what I've seen and they've talked about is like this Far Cry style game. I'm like, this isn't the Arcane style of game I love. That doesn't mean it won't be bad, but I think the type of game I like from them is vastly different. So we'll see if in the thick of all that they nail the immersive sim qualities I like. But that's how I'm feeling right now for it.
Right on. What about you, Kak? What is your take on this?
Kind of a roller coaster. It's been a weird one for me because in the beginning, I remember when it was first shown at one of the showcases as their exclusive title, I'm like, okay, but I wasn't like wowed. And then as the trailers started to heat up towards the launch, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get a feeling like you, Colin. I'm a vampire fan. And I thought this was a unique take on vampires. And I'm like, all right, they're going for a cartoonish art style. Okay, fine. Then obviously, me and Maddie got a chance to play the game, and obviously it was the PC version because what I played was 60 frames per second at the time. So naturally, I assumed, this is going to be 60. It's smooth. It's no problem. My main issues when I played it was actually the AI of the cultists. I felt the AI was just too easy, and I didn't feel like their
I don't think it worked.
I don't think it worked. To be honest, I thought their cone of vision was like extremely limited. Like I could be a block away. They acted like they couldn't see me kind of thing. And I was like, that kind of thing. But I did like the vampires. I felt the vampires, the way they teleported, they got up on you. I felt that when I was kind of like going through breach and clear of houses, it gave me a lot of mystery and feel. And then, obviously we played the single player version of the game. But the thing also for me was, when I had a chance to interview Harvey from Arcane and Harvey Smith, and I was just like, look, I know the challenges of, because I play State of Decay, I was a huge State of Decay fan, and one of my gripes for State of Decay was that the 4-player co-op, you're tethered in this circle, right? So I know at the time when I spoke to Undead Labs, they were like, hey, Cog, it's CPU bound, you can't really, and I'm like, okay, cool, but with this, Harvey's like, hey, no, I fought the devs. Because the devs like, hey, Harvey, you want 4 people in an open world to go everywhere, do everything? And he was like, yeah. So he said, yeah, after like certain bits of progression, yes, he said, they will kind of group you together if someone does something major that advances the story. But on that end, I'm like, okay, that's pretty ambitious. So when I heard the 30 frames, Maddie woke me up to one day, I was disappointed. I think I understand why, but it still doesn't make me disappointed for a multiplayer first-person shooter game to have that. And especially most people are going to look at it and say, hey, this doesn't look that graphically intense, impressive for you to not be 60. So the vibe I got is this. To me, my theory is Microsoft has cracked the whip and said this game's coming out. And, I think it's a situation where they had a year, and whether it be scheduling for the rest of the year for Xbox's first party, that it just doesn't fit with Diablo. I mean, Diablo's not first party, but, Starfield, but Diablo is coming. They got the marketing rights and so on. There's probably no space for it to come out. My main concern is what Maddie said, that how long is this 60 frames going to take? And if it comes out, who is it going to miss the zeitgeist, and will people care? And that's what I'm worried about coming in. So my prediction right now, I'm hoping low 80s, that right now, because it gets this feeling that it's coming in hot. I just got to be honest. That's how I'm feeling right now. Yeah,
it seemed to me that the 30 frames thing was hidden. And I was a little confused because even you guys were at the event, and I was wondering if initially, like, why didn't anyone ask about this? But then it really dawned on me, having done so many events. It's like, well, they put you on PC. It's not really a question. Like, why would you even ask something like that? I was trying to kind of put myself in that place, and I didn't like what seemed to be like a pretty manipulative move to try to hide this as long as possible. It reminds me a little bit of like the Vita memory card stuff. That's always my hallmark for like late very late in the game. Like, you got to say it. You got to get it out. There's nothing you can really do about it. At least they can fix this, and they will. But yeah, the urgency and just getting it out over the 60 frames fix makes it seem like they understand that they need to start supplying Game Pass with games. And no doubt Redfall fits in this first, second, and third party limbo that they have with all of these different games as they come and go. So I'll be interested to see how it does. Let's talk to the Sacred Boys and see what their last minute feelings are here. We've talked about the game a little bit because on Sacred, we weren't going to talk about it at all, except for the fact that so many people wrote in about it. I thought I'd be a dickhead not to pull someone's question about it, so we did. But Chris, I'm curious if you're going to check this out. You're a Game Pass consumer.
Yeah.
You're a gamer.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I will check it out because I'm just a first person shooter guy. If there's a new first person shooter that I can play with no cost to me, like of course I'm going to check it out. But also I do like Arcane typically. In fact, I feel like I love Arcane games generally. I think Deathloop was the only one that didn't hit with me, and even that I feel like I'm pretty convinced that if I went back to Deathloop in like a year or two, I'd probably have a completely different frame of reference for it. In the same way that I had a completely different reference for Prey when I went back to that years later. So I'm into Arcane. I think it looks cool. I like vampires too. I like the style of what I'm seeing. I like how Redfall looks. I like that aspect of it. But also I do have this feeling of like something about it feels off. I haven't played it, but it does feel like I'm watching gameplay of it, and maybe it's the people playing it don't make it seem very good. That's a huge problem with first-person shooters or showing first-person shooters off. I think we talked about in a recent episode of Sacred Symbols about the famous Polygon Doom playthrough or whatever the hell.
Right. Yeah, that was Arthur Geese. Shout out.
And everybody was like, "Man, this game's gonna suck," and it was amazing. I do think this is one of those games that I don't know if there's going to be a lot of in between in it. I think people are either going to really find something that they really, really like about it, and it's really going to hit with them, or it's just not going to click at all with people. And I just say that as like somebody who's generally a fan of Arcane stuff, because I don't know anybody who's middling on Dishonored. You know, all I know are people who haven't played it, people who have played it and didn't like it, or people who have played it and loved it. I feel the same thing with Prey. I feel the same thing with Deathloop. And that just seems to be Arcane's thing, which is like, it's kind of interesting looking at their history with that stuff. But I want to give it a solid try. I want more attempts at this kind of Left 4 Dead kind of social co-op shooter stuff, especially because Back 4 Blood missed the mark so heavily in such a weird way too, because I feel like that game could have just cut some stuff out and actually would have been pretty solid. But I don't know. I'm always going to champion games coming out in this space, even if this isn't necessarily what I want out of Arcane, because Arcane, I think, obviously is really, really known and really, really beloved for immersive sims and stealth. This is very, very different. I do like the fact that they are also in a position where they're allowed to try things like this, because I would feel the same way about Hi-Fi Rush out of Tango, where it's like, what would you expect? Like, you wouldn't have necessarily wanted this, but it ended up being amazing. So, you know, my prediction, I would imagine probably low 80s. That's the vibe that I'm getting from like the footage that I'm seeing, and just kind of how I feel about how the general public will receive it. But also the frames per second thing. I've kind of brought this up a lot lately because I think it's telling. I don't remember what episode of Sacred Symbols it was on or what the subject was, but we covered something about how a lot of players actually turn high frame rate modes off when they're on by default, like a shocking number, like a shocking percentage. And I am starting to wonder if maybe we are so clued into this stuff, and like we know Digital Foundry. Like Digital Foundry to us is like we all know Digital Foundry. I put on Digital Foundry to go to sleep. You know, they're like a part of my like ritual. I wonder how many average consumers actually care.
Good
like
question.
How many people really give a shit? Because to me it's like paramount. Like I can't play a game at 30 frames. Like I can't do it. If it's 30 frames on console, I'm playing it on PC. Like there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I mean, Gotham Knights selling as well as it did, despite it having like a very limited frame rate on console and like all this other stuff. I'm starting to wonder, like, maybe if we are in a bit of a bubble when it comes to this stuff as enthusiasts or as people who are a little bit more clued into the industry and the tech side of what these experiences are. So I don't know. To us, it's a big deal, but I wouldn't be surprised if most people didn't give a shit that it ran at 30 frames per second and loved it or hated it despite it.
I think that's totally true, and we made that argument on the show, Chris. And I think it's such a logical argument that it would be surprising that anyone could argue against it. Which is that if you're just a layman, and I consider myself a technical layman, like I'm really just kind of more in the know because of what I do. But if you're just a dude who plays games, you want the prettier picture. That's like that's intuitive to me. That's obvious. You bought this 4K TV, and this game runs at 4K. You don't give a shit about the frame rate. You want it to look beautiful, and that seems obvious to me.
And it's like, to me, that's like such a massive difference in perspective too, because like to me, frame rate is beautiful. Like when something is moving completely smoothly, like that's beautiful. I don't care how many pixels it has. So I don't know, man. It's a weird, and also, man, what was we talked about something. It'll come back to me, but there was like another conversation about frame rate that we were having a while ago.
Yeah, put a pin in it and let us know if it comes to you. We can go as long as you'd like. Dustin, just wanted to get your closing thoughts on this as we wrap up our Redfall conversation. If there's anything you would like to add, I'm trying to make this argument in my head as I present it to you. It's not really an argument because I can't really. There's something about this game, and it's not even the quality. It's multiplayer games on a subscription service. There's something about it to me that seems like there's a lower buy-in and therefore lower affiliation or loyalty to a product and letting it stick. So you kind of have to get your shit done quickly. I think they have to get this patch out somewhat quickly, but that line of reasoning doesn't really resonate with the popularity of free-to-play games, which would have an even lower cost of entry and people would give a shit about even less. So Redfall's a real mystery. I'll be watching this game with great intrigue about how it does commercially specifically, because, or at least in terms of Game Pass, if they've released stats on that, because I think it's an important game. But I want to say, and people that listen to Sacred Symbols know, I've never hated on this game. I've always thought it looked cool, and I think people have made fun of me. Have I seen some of the shitty assets? Yes. Do I think that makes I can find a shitty asset in Horizon right now if you want. I don't know that calls for that. But anyway, he's coughing. He's so upset about this. Right. So talk to me about it.
Yeah. So I am a huge Arcane fan, particularly Dishonored 2, Death of the Outsider. I think these are some of the most criminally underappreciated games in our industry by just people that kind of blew by them. And I think Chris is right in that there are some people that check them out and it's not for them. But I think that the people that are into them love them. And it's disappointing to me because I feel like this is just conjecture, I guess, from me, is that I'm guessing Dishonored 2 didn't quite do as well as they would have liked. And there was a pivot point in the company where they decided they needed to make games that would be more approachable to a general audience. And we saw that firsthand with Deathloop. And that's one of the reasons why Maddie, I think, was disappointed with it, is that it definitely watered down some of the elements that we love about Arcane games and kind of set you on what initially appeared as a really open and creative path into kind of just putting you on a set path that needs to be done in a certain way, which ended up being really disappointing for big Arcane fans.
6.5 user score on Metacritic, by the way. Go on.
What was that?
6.5 user score on Metacritic, by the way.
6.5.
Deathloop has?
Messy.
Yeah,
that's interesting. That's interesting.
That's how I feel when I also see Redfall, is that this game was greenlit during that time where they're thinking, how do we take the Arcane formula and package into a way that is more accessible to the general public in order to increase interest in these types of games? And so I didn't even know that. I mean, I've seen some of the preview stuff, but the fact that the powers are limited to each character sounds really disappointing to me. And even just, it's not that I'm against a multiplayer Arcane game, but this just feels like a game that was made in a boardroom where they were thinking, okay, what kind of game can we make that may appeal to more people? What kind of multiplayer? Almost, it feels like in a way like hero shooter-esque. And so I think one of the important, you guys, I think, have totally covered the 30 frames conversation, so I don't need to comment anymore on that. But I think one of the biggest hangups of this game is something that is not being talked about right now because it's old news. But the fact that if you play with other people, your progress with them does not transfer over. It's only for the host. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. And that fucking sucks.
Yeah, that's weird.
That sucks. And it's one of those things that...
That's like Battlefield not having a scoreboard.
Yeah.
Right.
I forgot about that. Holy shit.
It's like if you think about if you play for 3 or 4 hours with a friend or something, and your friend gets all the progress, and then you want to play a little bit the next day, and you have nothing. You got to redo all the content you just did. This is the sleeper bad PR that I guess is already out there that I just think people aren't thinking about. And it sucks because, like I said, I'm a huge Arcane fan. And I, despite its flaws, really liked Deathloop overall. I think it was a fun game to play albeit a little disappointing. But my hope for Arcane is that Deathloop and Redfall came at a time where there was more pressure on them to make games that sold. And so now that they're in a different ecosystem that is no longer, I guess it's subscription driven and not sales driven. So Phil, make it happen. Make Dishonored 3 happen. Phil, I'll kiss your ring. I'll kiss something else, whatever it takes. Let's make Dishonored 3 happen now that it's, that
balloon knot. He wants you to kiss that balloon knot.
Something. I don't know what I need to do, but I don't know. I hate that term. I hope it's a great game overall, just because in some ways I think it looks fun. And some of the other footage I saw, I thought, what the fuck is this? This looks like the worst Destiny event where everyone's just putting a million shots into this weird vampire with bad animations walking around. It was really weird. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to be playing it day one because I have Game Pass right now. I bought like a whole year and a half or 2 years at a time.
As well. That's a huge part.
What?
No self-respect as well, which is a huge part of it. Is you're just lamenting this game, and then you're like, I'm going to play it day one. I'm an Arcane fan. I'm willing to give them a chance no matter what. Has nothing to do with no self-respect. I'm going to check it out because I appreciate what they've made. It comes off more serious when we had to explain it because it was really just meant as like a throwaway joke. Not that you literally have no self-respect.
All right.
It was more meant of like
falling apart at the seams.
It is. I want to say this because you guys were saying about kind of the Arcane, like Dishonored. I honestly, what turned me off to Dishonored was I wanted to do a clean trophy run, and I just couldn't do it on PS3. I didn't have time, so I just was like, fuck it, I never went back to it. That was literally what happened with it. But
that is such an insane reason to fall off of Dishonored.
Because you have to like
you can just play it any way you want. And you just choose not to play it,
I think, or something like that. And I couldn't get over that. But I'm in a different place in my mind, in my life right now. By the way,
you're well enough to play it.
I'm well. I mean, we're gonna see. But I finally, by the way, changed my PSN name the other day. After I've been Moriarty-IGN since PS3 came out. And I changed it to Long Island Viper. And there were lots of concern. People being like, oh, the name, where's your name going? I'm like, well, it's none of your fucking business. But I just told you all that now. But I wanted to say this, that Dishonored kind of becoming less hardcore in, let's say, Deathloop. So like, making that more of an accessible sort of thing is what attracted me to it. And for I hope you guys look at Deathloop, in other words, as some sort of entryway marijuana entry drug to, I don't really believe marijuana is an entry, a gateway drug, but an entryway into Arcane to give it kind of a second chance, because
that's
it was a little bit more accessible.
Over the head with
I've been trying to tell him
years here. It's just,
I've been trying to tell him, but to your point, now I understand Dustin's and Maddie's frustration, because when you fall in love with something for a specific reason, and then you see the core essence of that change, it can be disheartening. But continue, Kyle. I know where you, but I'm with you.
No, it's all good. You're not interrupting me at all. I mean, that was basically the full thought. Please.
Yeah, I just feel that the core philosophy has changed, and I just look at it as Bethesda as a whole. You know, there was a downward trend prior to acquisition, and they were trying different things, and they were experimenting to see what was trying to get popular. And I think this is kind of the remnants of that in the dev cycle. I do think that you will eventually get, you know, the Dishonored, you know, 3 in that style that you want, but we're in that transitionary phase where this was developed when they were trying things, and we just got to see if it hits. That's where my thought process is.
Do you think that at one point this was like a single player game that was then kind of broken up in a boardroom to a multiplayer style thing?
What's interesting is when we went to demo it, Maddie, they were very insistent about the single player experience, right? Like that, you know, we still have the.
I don't think there were many doubts either from what we had seen on Defining Duke, and as I cover Xbox, I didn't saw many people saying like, "Oh, this is going to be a bad single player experience." Now they were like, "We want to make sure you know we preserved it." So, but that was the biggest surprise of that event for sure, was us doing that.
The key bullet points I took was single player experience is different, and that we are not Left 4 Dead. Like, they were very animate. You know, we are more Far Cry than we are Left 4 Dead. So I just thought that was interesting, the approaches they took. Yeah. Kind of picked up. Those are the bullet points. I'm telling you.
That's so interesting because
when they say that, it made me sick.
That's interesting to me because like if they had come out and be like this is an Arcane Left 4 Dead, I would have been so psyched. I would have been so excited to hear that.
I guess just like coming hot off the heels of Far Cry 6, Colin, I know you like the game a lot, but for me, coming hot off the heels of that and saying this is not Left 4 Dead, this is Far Cry, I'm like, bro, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, why would you ever say that? Like, never compare
totally
yourself to Far Cry.
I think I'm in the minority on Far Cry at this point. It doesn't insult me. I didn't work on the game, so I
you love it.
I love with a capital L Far Cry.
Like, I think Far Cry 5 is great. I think that one was awesome.
Oh yeah, Far Cry 5 is maybe the best one. I mean, it's 3 or 5. I think 5 is mega underrated. The whole David Koresh, like, you know, angle and like these fucking Christian fundamentalists. It was awesome. Yeah, and I think I don't know, but I understand people are not into it. It's fine. It doesn't insult me at all. If I wrote it or something, then I'd expect you to hold your fire. Let me ask you guys this as I exit though about Arcane, and maybe a reason to feel positive or negative is like Arcane was one studio during Dishonored, right? And then they split into 2, right? And it was, I have it in my notes here, the guys who made Prey made Deathloop. The guys who made Dishonored 2 made Redfall. I'm pretty sure that's the way it goes. Right. And I wonder if that gives us any hints about what may or may not come next.
Arcane Leon, I think, is this?
Leon. Like, I think that's the core studio. And then the Texas studio is the spinoff because they're a fundamentally French team, I think.
Yes.
So there's could be something there about maybe a hint or two about what might be to come. And Deathloop, in other words, Deathloop seems like it sticks more with the traditional Arcane formula that might, I think, inevitably bring them back to Dishonored 3. And Dishonored's actually, I have a small list, a physical list I've actually written of like game. Everyone has their backlog, I guess, in quotes. I don't try to track that shit at all, but because I think that would drive me even more insane than I already am. But there are like a core, probably 10 games or so where it's like, you got to get to this at some point in your life. Like and Dishonored's one of those games. Because I agree with you, Chris, it is psychotic, but it also came, you have to understand, it also came from a time, and I think Maddie might understand this the best out of all of us, although I don't know if anyone truly understands it, is you got to move on. Like when I was at IGN, it was horrifying. It was horrifying. You know, if you look at my trophies from that era, I beat a lot of games. We're just like, move on.
Like 30%ers all the time.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And I don't do that to myself anymore. That's why I insist no one in my company or in our company here does that to themselves too, unless they want to. Because of those Dishonored fatalities that occurred in 2012. You know, I just never played it.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with that. But I'm hoping for the best for Redfall. I think it's important for Xbox. I don't think it's nearly as important as Starfield is, and we'll certainly focus in on that more when the time comes.
One thing I remembered what I was going to say before. I still, to this day, have to go to people, like when I'm at people's houses and they're like, let's play a game, I still have to switch it to game mode for them. Like that is still a thing that happens. Yeah. And these are people who, like, by the way, it's like, let's play Smash. Like it's not even like graphically like beautiful. Like, oh man, I can't wait to play I don't know, Crysis 2. You know, it's always like really intense, like really important input heavy games that they're like, yeah, let's play. And then I'm playing. I was like, why is this? Do you play this way? Still to this day in like 2023, it's so people clearly don't give a shit about responsiveness, which is wild to even conceptualize. But
dude,
I don't know.
Chris, when you mentioned that on Sacred Symbols a few weeks back, we got a comment. Someone said the game mode doesn't do anything; it just makes the colors worse.
You are out of your fucking mind.
I had to show it to Holly. I said, I love it when people are confidently wrong.
That
happens quite a bit in the YouTube comments, but it didn't even make me mad. It just made me laugh. So shout out to that guy. Hopefully you're listening right now.
That's actually good. Maybe people are just like, maybe people literally can't see it. Maybe people's brains are just on a delay.
But that's what I was saying, Chris. Remember a couple of weeks ago, that's what I said, is that there was a time where I was like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Dead up. I'd be at IGN or something. I used to call them the frame rate savants, the people, that's literally the term I used to use, where people to walk up to your TV, especially the video producers, like the guys with an eye, and they'd be like, oh, it's running at 40. I'd be like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, dude. And I think it's the PS5 era for me, a layman, like a technical, like a Luddite, basically. You get beaten over the head with it over and over again. And then that becomes what you know and see. And I know it's so old to people, but when I saw Evil West in 30 frames, it made me want to throw up. I was like, oh, that was literally my come to Jesus moment. I was like, oh, I got to fix this. And I went in and fixed it. And I was like, oh. And I think that console gamers are just a little late to the game. If you're a console purist like I am, you have not had much exposure to 60 frame gameplay. I mean, it's a pretty rare thing. And so I think that's a big part of it. And I think the more people, PC snobs have been playing games at 60 frames forever, will continue, and they're now playing 120 frames and more than that, and are creating a whole new set of expectations. So I think that there's something to that. The reference I used was Mallrats and the hidden picture gag that they have with the boat and the sailboat, and the guy can't see it. I was one of those people. Like I couldn't see that shit at all when I was a kid. It used to frustrate me, like to the point where I thought it was a conspiracy or something. Like I'm like, there'd be like mall kiosks with them all laid out. And I'm like, it's nothing. There's nothing there. But then when people started to point it out to me, be like, here is the boat. Here's the house. I'd be like, oh, and then now I can't see them without seeing it.
Without seeing it. Yeah. It's a good point. It's a good point.
I just had one final thing to throw out about Redfall. Please. Kind of a concluding point, because it goes back to the frame rate a little bit and why I think we're getting that reaction from core gamers, because I think I agree with Chris. I believe who said it, that we might learn with this release how much frame rate actually matters to the broader gamer, because I do think Redfall will probably end up doing well Game Pass wise. We'll never know what sales, unfortunately, with Xbox. We'll see like the MPD rankings. We'll get a rough gauge. Halo was number 2 the month it came out, so you'll get an idea of like some people bought it. I guess we don't know how many,
especially on PC, probably.
Yeah. Like we'll have loose metrics, but I think it'll end up doing well. But I think the reason people lost their minds with this one in particular, because I said to Cog, I think it just speaks to where Xbox is as a company right now. Like to fans, 30 FPS almost speaks to the quality of their releases, because there was already this budding fear of Starfield going to be 30 frames. And with everything we saw with Redfall being 60, you kind of felt like that was a safe one, because I'm of the mindset, I don't know if it's a popular school of thought, probably especially among game developers, but I think 30 FPS is acceptable with like perceived ambition. So if you look at a Starfield, like I hate to say it, but I just look at that, I'm like, that's miles and miles more ambitious than what we're seeing in Redfall. You look at a Plague Tale Requiem, where I think its visuals were extremely ambitious. And, it's this more curated Last of Us style game. I find that more ambitious than Redfall personally. And I know beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but I think 30 FPS for a lot of these gamers is acceptable with that ambition. It's like, yeah, if you're going to give me space travel, open world gameplay, I could do pretty much everything. It's 30 frames. I can accept that. With Redfall, though, it kind of felt like, the biggest ambitious component of it was not being tethered, which I think if that's the sacrifice they had to make, where in turn it's like, well, now we got to go down to 30 frames because this guy could be at the north end, you could be at the south end. And then you combine that with like what seemed, at least in the preview, busted AI, the progress not carrying over, like Dustin pointed out, like a lot of rough edges. I think it felt like Xbox fans kind of got to this boiling point where you tell us to wait, like we've waited so long. You tell us to wait one more time until the first half, and then we get this. And it's like the least we've asked for is frame rate. And when you hear like, well, we can deliver it, right? It's like 60 frame rate mode will come. Then a lot of fans are like, so you can do it. You're just not doing it now for the release. And the console users who've kind of been there since the start, I think the reason Xbox is really still around as a brand at all, now feel betrayed. So I think that's why we got such a extreme reaction out of this one. Because when you look at Gotham Knights, it was that's not good. That was just kind of it. That's not good. The game was already looking kind of rough. That's not good. With Plague Tale, it was a little more quiet because the game was legit amazing. So I think with Xbox, the reason they got the loudest reaction with this 30 frames is because of the weight. I think the perceived value of the game. I don't think to the Xbox gamer, when you have Starfield on this pedestal, I think when you look at the one on the lower on the totem pole as the one delivering the lower frame rate, it almost speaks to the rest of the library. Because as I write the show, I've seen the domino effect within my own audience, within Defining Duke's audience, is this sort of, well, now what about Hellblade? Hellblade's an Unreal Engine 5 game that's looking extremely impressive on a technical front. Like, what about that now? What about Fable? It's cascaded on them in a flash. And it's kind of goes back to what Colin said, right? Like, they recognize we need to deliver on games. But now, because they've got so many loaded up in the barrel, they just got to let them fly. And whether they're ready or not, here they come. And so I think the biggest thing, if I could end on a positive note, that I'm excited about with Redfall is that nowadays when you see first-person shooter, open world, and some form of multiplayer component, you can almost guarantee there's going to be live service elements, something there, a persistent world that's kind of become the buzz for these games. And I really respect that Arcane is making a strictly open world co-op game. No microtransactions. Like, they're adding in characters afterwards in this sort of paid format, but no loot boxes, no evolving mechanics. No, we're going to tether you down. You got to stick with this live world. I do respect that because it's just a rarity, but I wouldn't know if I would label that as ambitious, but more like a return to the norm. But that, I just wanted to get those kind of closing thoughts out there. So especially because I don't want to come across as Mr. Negative for most of this conversation. It's just like, fuck that. So just wanted to put that out there.
I hear what you're saying. And to me, I look at Arcane and I get like, I don't want to say media molecule vibes, but it's like the best corollary I can think of in that when you let a team do something different, it's kind of like Obsidian with Pentiment, although that was smaller, and other things where it's like when you let a team kind of spin off and do something smaller or different, it comes with inherent risks and it comes with taking them off the board. You can always have the team do something reliable. Like it's an underrated risk that Sony's letting Naughty Dog make factions themselves. It's a major risk. Now, Sony has 4 games with online components, so they know, I think, a little bit about that, including really successful online components with games like the Uncharted games and The Last of Us, of course. But that's a risk. It takes them off the board. I mean, they can only be working on so many things, probably just one other project. And so you really hope it hits, because it's not just like the business realities of it not hitting. It's that you only have so many games. I mean, developers say that all the time. You have like, what do you have in your career? Maybe 10 games, maybe. I mean, that's a lot. If you get 10 games, that means you probably have a pretty fruitful, potentially 50-year career making games, And so I look at it from that angle too. I just hope everyone's making what they want to make. That's not reality. That's not the reality of capitalism striking at the nexus of art. And that's totally fine. But it comes up with questions like this. And I'll be very interested to see. The one thing that we say this on our show, if Spider-Man 2 or something like that didn't run at 60 frames, we'd be dunking all over that thing. It guaranteed. But I don't think anyone thinks that that's going to happen. I feel like that's
a whole
impossible.
Other part of the conversation. Is just, a lot of Xbox fans are like, PlayStation never let this happen. And I mean, you look at that Last of Us PC port, you're like, well, but again, that just speaks to, I think, PlayStation's quality releases consistently. Like, you guys aren't going out there, not that Cog and I were, but we're not seeing fans parade in the street going like, well, I guess what does that mean for Spider-Man 2 now? What does that mean for what's going to happen with Ghost of Tsushima's sequel? Like, you just don't get that. It just speaks to the vast gap between the two. That's not just perception anymore. It's becoming reality.
Yeah, that's what 2022 will do to you. Let's just call it what it is.
It's like I want a more. I feel like we're always talking about. It's mostly because of the Activision stuff that we're just always talking about Xbox, and it looks like that's going to go through. And it's like, fine, whatever. Just like, let's just get this over with. I'm scared of how Sony's going to retaliate. I really hope that they don't make a mega move, and I think they will. I think it's obvious that they're going to. We'll see what happens. But with just this consolidative, point of view, we got to make sure that the guys that have the money and the power are hitting, because it has a real effect on in this case, like 30 teams or something like that, right? And a whole ecosystem that we want to be firing on all cylinders. But dude, they announced Spider-Man 2 is running at some nonsense. No one's gonna be having it. So like that might be a reality. In fact, people said if it's a multiplayer game or like some sort of co-op game, you might want to adjust your expectations. And I'm like, that's an interesting point, but I just couldn't imagine that. Like that, because it's like you said, they have set some sort of quality bar. And The Last of Us on PC, definitely a Naughty Dog stumble, no doubt. But this reminds me a lot of. I feel like this is mostly Iron Galaxy. I don't know. And it reminds me a little bit of Fallout 76 in that like you kind of took too much credit for the game. And so now it's gone bad and you look like assholes.
Yep.
But that's just conjecture. I have no idea. All right. But all of this, and Dustin said something earlier that made me want to talk about this and get this in there, is just the Redfall conversation has brought about what I would argue is maybe the most pronounced level of fanboyism I've ever seen. I've been in the games industry for 21 years, literally, and I've never seen anything like that. Like what is going on right now? And I kind of wanted to ask you guys about this, because what I wrote here in my notes was the mainstream media, both in the real world and in games, is in complete collapse, and soon won't really exist the way we look at it anymore. It'll be these legacy sites or legacy publications with SEO and all of that. But the conversation will continue to be driven more and more by people like us, people with smaller audiences, micro audiences, a microphone, Twitch stream, whatever. And I look at this and I just feel like, is this the future of games coverage, or can we do something to kind of throw off these shackles? Because for as much as people say it doesn't represent gaming as a whole, and I totally agree with that, the front facing part of gaming as it interfaces with the rest of the world on something like Twitter, where everyone sees everyone else, this community sees this community, sees this community, sees this community. It's just a bad look and a bad scene. And for the first time, I've really wanted to just disconnect from reading it. I've long since disconnected from writing any of that kind of like getting involved in like the Twitter shit. But I don't know. I just wanted to touch base with you guys and see if you're seeing it too. Cog, what do you think about this?
Yeah, this is real. It's funny you brought this up. I had an interesting tweet on my timeline. I think based off of a conversation that me and Maddie had on Duke in reference to someone saying, all this negativity they're seeing in gaming, as far as just whether it be Twitter or whether it be, people responding to each other directly, personal attacks, that kind of thing. For me as an OG, it's kind of silly to me, because it's like, gaming has always been a unifier for me. Like, that's like, okay, these are my geeks, these are my dudes. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm part of this family that loves this thing that really wasn't well received. It was seen as a fad or something that's not going to last and that kind of bit. But to your point, it's disappointing to me. Like, I just look, we all going to have inherent bias towards things that are our favorite. I get that on some level. The problem I have is that when people lack objectivity with things they love, and because of that, then they go on the attack. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I have the problem with. It's like, you don't have to personalize it if someone disagrees. And I think I just struggle with it. I look at Twitter sometimes. I look at what's going on. These are people that I'm cool with, and I'm just watching people just go at it, whether it be in the media, journalism, friends, whatever. And I'm like, we really beefing over games? We really doing it? Like, that is wild to me. That makes no sense. And again, I'm not trying to tell anybody how to run their social media. Some people get enjoyment off of it. You know what I mean? I see some people they look forward to who they gonna go at today. Like, I get it. But for me, I just like, wow, this is a lot of investment in this. And I just choose not to use my platform like that. So, in terms of your overall thing, as far as, journalism, I think what's happening is also, let's be honest, the old guard has been called out. on a lot of time on inaccuracies or sometimes their bias. And you're starting to see the rise of the content creator, the streamer or what have you. So it is shifting. Me and Gene has had this conversation before, and he's one of the few that I really respect in the sense that, he doesn't try to isolate that group and act like they don't have a voice at all, kind of thing. And I see him he's like coexisting in a way from where he's at. And I think that's a unique perspective. I don't really see that, but because on the other hand, I've seen, other people say, hey, you guys are nothing but provocateurs and, all this other stuff. So it's weird to see, so as an older OG gamer, but I get where you're going from. It's a little disheartening to me because at the end of the day, games is always supposed to be fun. That's my escape. That's like, okay, I got all this garbage going on in the real world. I'm just going to boot up and just play some games, have some fun. And like, the last thing I'll say is, I don't see nobody sharing games and having fun. Like, yo, I was on this level. I did blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And like, just like a cool you don't even see that no more. Like, the minute you do that, look at this sucks. And like, bro, like I just put up a picture saying how much fun I'm having. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's wild out here, man. It's a different time.
That's the problem with Twitter, though, is Colin, I know you've said this exactly, so pardon me for repeating you, but just people... I get the idea when you put something out there, you were open to replies, right? But people truly think they can just give you their thoughts on anything. And it's like, you need to stop like overestimating how much you matter to me. Like, I don't know how else to put it. And I sound like an asshole saying that.
That's the core of the parasocial relationship, dude. I mean, you have to say things like that sometimes.
Yeah, like just a lot of people overestimate. It's like, I put this out because I thought this clip was cool. Like I did it for Sonic Frontiers. Like I made a joke saying like, oh, it was game of the year. Actually, funny enough, ended up in my top 10. But besides that, it wasn't my game of the year. But there were dudes in my replies pissed off at me. And I'm like, you don't matter, bro. I'm enjoying my time with my game. I don't know why you're here in my replies. I just don't entertain it anymore. I just don't reply to anyone at this point, except like friends and colleagues. It's just, it's not worth the time. But, I like to joke on Twitter often. I'm sure most of you guys know that. So like when PlayStation acquired Firewalk, like I quoted the tweet and made some type of tongue-in-cheek joke along the lines of saying like, I'm afraid that clearly playing like a moron. Like I'm like, oh, I'm afraid, Xbox is going to have this game ruined here. I really hope we do something to block this. Obviously poking fun at how Jim has reacted to what's going on with Xbox and Activision, which I get. Like if you've listened to any of our coverage, me and Cog have made it clear we understand where he's coming from. He's not really wrong for trying to do what's right by his company, but people lost their minds and thought I was serious. They're like, I got people quote tweeting me like, damn, thought Maddie was smarter than this. I'm like, it's who's the moron now? It's ridiculous.
It's because people already have a hard time just like delineating tone in normal conversation. So when you see it on Twitter, everybody just assumes you're hyper serious. Which is crazy because to me, Twitter is like one of the least serious places you could possibly spend any amount of time. They make you pay for a verified badge. Like this isn't this isn't a place. This is just like, this is a complete shit show. Like once I realized that like everything I said on Twitter should be just a complete joke, I had a lot more fun with it. Mm-hmm. Like it's like, this is not a place to be taken seriously. This is not a place for nuanced conversations. It's unfortunately the place people go for that somehow. But like, it's not tailored to that. So I feel like the best way to use Twitter is the way that you use it. Just cracking jokes, cracking wise, and that's it. Maybe here's an update about what's going on loosely, but that's it.
I keep it short and simple. Yeah, it's you can't have the nuanced conversation. You just can't.
It's impossible.
No.
It reminds me, because we were just talking about sports earlier. It actually is relevant because it reminds me of like, with the Rangers, like I talked about how like the series is even now, right? It's 2-2. And so like dudes who are running like full ass social media accounts dedicated to these teams are like in the Rangers comments going like, oh, Jack Hughes owns you guys. Like you just got scored on by Siegenthaler. Or I'm just like, they don't know who you are, bro. Like what war are you fighting? And it's the same thing in gaming. It's like to Xbox to PlayStation, you're a number. But these people develop these parasocial relationships like they fucking matter to these guys. And what I will call out is Xbox executives do follow some of these fanboys. And I fucking think that's weird. Like, I don't think that's cool at all. Like, some of these dudes are out here starting fights and you got like Aaron Greenberg following them. I'm like, bro, why are you following this guy? Like, this dude is an asshole starting fights with people who are in another gaming ecosystem and we're approving of that. Like, That's what it says to me. And I don't know, man. Like that to me, just fanboyism in general is kind of nasty, but like it's pretty obvious if you're a gaming is like you should kind of just not follow those folks. But yeah,
Maddie,
it's beyond me, man.
It's one of those things where people took your tweet seriously is surprising, but it's actually not surprising because what you said is the kind of stupid bait that these console Twitters put out there and say seriously. That's the thing, that when you see some of these accounts that live and die by console warrior bullshit, that's the type of stuff that they're saying that any reasonable person would look at and say, this is the biggest bullshit I've ever seen. And you're saying whatever you can. And this is something that we've talked about on Sacred Symbols, is just that this idea of the bottom feeder content, the people that are picking up the scraps from Sacred Symbols and Defining Duke and any other respectable show, and then turning that into their content. To me, that is the lowest form of content. It is embarrassing that you literally don't have anything good enough to say, that all you have to do is comment on what other people say. Shit's cringe.
It's just parasite content.
Yeah.
No, it's weird. And I will say from a legal point of view or something, I've never and would never copyright strike someone or like if people took our footage or it's like, I think people have the freedom to express themselves however they want. And it's like what Maddie said earlier, when you put yourself in the public square, you got to expect you're going to get it all back, and that eventually comes with the territory. But you're absolutely right. And that's what I said on a recent show, when you make that kind of content the center of why people come to you, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy and it's a race to the bottom. And it's just not a substantive, or it's not a good way to build your content. There's no one that really does that kind of thing that's big, right? Because the smaller people that do that kind of stuff are always going to alienate themselves from even the audiences that could potentially like both of those people's shows. It seems Pyrrhic at the very best, and so I try not to interact with those kinds of people. And when I have something to say about a person, I say it on this show, just straight up. And then I often try to reach out to people. I mean, a lot of people tell me to go fuck myself. I mean, that's totally their prerogative and they're right. But it's important that we continue to, I think, the sports references make a lot of sense to me because it reminds me of my love of the Jets and the Islanders, but specifically the Jets. Like the Jets fans base is so fatalistic, it's hysterical. Like if you go to Gangrene Nation or like one of these huge websites, read the comments. It's there's a difference between like when the Jets are in full swoon. Now everyone's making fun of the Jets on Gangrene Nation for paying too much for Aaron Rodgers, right? It's like they can't possibly ever win, ever. And that's usually because they don't ever win. There's a love for the brand and there's a love for the team, but it's keeping it honest. There's no such thing as like a Jets fanboy. It's we use the term in sports like homers. But we always use that term, and I think you guys would agree, as people that like always saw the sunny side. It wasn't denying reality.
Well, don't people like throw riots in like when their team wins or whatever the hell?
That's a Philadelphia thing. Yeah, I mean,
they do.
That seems kind of insane.
No, it isn't. It is insane. But what I'm saying is that's just if I'm giving you my personal like political opinion, is like seems like people looking for a justification to go crazy. I mean, that was my experience in Boston. I was there in college when the Red Sox won in 2004, which was like one of the most momentous sports events ever. Huge. And I was outside during it and I was walking around seeing it. It was fucking insanity. And most of those people didn't give a shit about the Red Sox. So I think that there is some, who knows? Anyway, we're getting sidetracked. The one thing I want to say though, that I think is really important, and I'm curious what you guys think of this as another way to talk about this, is I get this feeling that there's a growing level of power amongst these people, maybe not so much prestige, but at the same time that they get facts completely wrong, or say things as if they don't understand what a video game is. There was a thread going around in the last few days of making fun of some influencer who was talking about, and I don't mean that as an insult, I guess I'm an influencer too, but that was being like, just take the engine, like basically take the engine out, change the engine in a game. It's like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like change it, like it's a car. Is that what you think an engine is in a video game? And then I see things like the two recent news stories that are making the rounds in PlayStation land right now. Horizon 3. I'm like, Horizon 3 was obvious if you beat Horizon 2. I don't know why this is news. Maybe it's because most of you didn't fucking play Horizon 2. And the second one was people talking about, Shuhei Yoshida said God of War Ragnarok cost $200 million. It's like, what show told you that game cost $200 million years ago? Where have you all been? You know, like everyone's like, I can't believe games cost that much. It's like, what do you, dude, $200 million for a AAA game like God of War is going to be cheap. Even right now.
Dude, even even Destiny 1 was like something like upwards of that amount too. Like, and that was about a decade ago.
I just see, it bothers me that it's like clout chasing and all and review bombing and all this kind of stuff, but it all culminates around not even knowing the product.
Right.
Like not even knowing the core facts. You're surprised that there's going to be a third Horizon game. How could you have possibly watched the ending of Horizon 2 and not known that? How? how can you be in an industry flooded with so much money where God of War Ragnarok isn't clearly a game that costs an excess of $150 to $200 million to make, and that is going to, like, do you not know anything about games? And these are the same people that are ratting, are going on and on about this, that, and the other thing on social media, but they don't understand the core product. And that's the thing that bothers me. And that was what I wanted to bring up and kind of bring full circle, this idea of the mainstream media collapsing at the same time that there's this vacuum of need, at the same time that like charlatans are coming in. And it matters because, like, who are you? You don't know shit if you're saying this stuff. I don't know. That's it. That's all I wanted to say. Cog, please.
No, I know where you're going. I think what it is my main issue is accountability. Because look, I don't claim to, know everything. There's sometimes I'm surprised. I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that. But I think what I notice is it's a struggle for people to say they got something wrong. like I just find that very content wise, everyone has to be the guy that say, yeah, I was the one that said I got, you heard it here first. You heard it here first kind of team. And I noticed that. And like I said, it's okay to not be knowledgeable in something or to get the resource that has the information on your platform to get proper, perspective on it. And I think that's my issue. It's just like when I look at other content sometimes, I'm like, man, it would be really cool if we get such and such on before we comment. Even like with the whole ABK stuff, there was I think Colin, me, you shared the same exact. I'm like, I literally, me and Maddie were like, look, we're not going to talk about this until Ho gets back because I want someone in mergers and acquisition who does this to give an informed opinion as to me just doing guesswork and then trying to say, yeah, I was right all along. You know what I mean? It's that kind of stuff that I see permeate. And that's my main issue. But I understand exactly where you're coming from, where, people who claim to love games are not putting in the work to try to truly understand the mechanics of the business and stuff. So.
Yeah, it's like, to me, it's the mechanics of the business, great way to put it, plus the brand, right? I don't talk about Halo because I don't know fucking anything about Halo. I played Halo 1 and Halo 2 years ago, on the original Xbox when they came out. And then I played Halo again last year and it was fun. But you're not going to see me being like, oh my God, Halo 6 or whatever kind of announcement. First of all, that's probably not news, whatever I'm saying. News. Second of all, I'm like the fakest dude in the world. This is why I get concerned, frankly, about people hiding their achievements and their trophies. I think it's weird. Like, I personally think it's a little suspicious when the same people that are talking about these things are not letting people see what they play. So that's because I always encourage Long Island Viper on PSN.
Ooh, shots.
139 platinum trophies.
Ooh, flex on them.
Most recent one, Final Fantasy 1.
Did you check to make sure that you actually kept those trophies after the name change? Because
everything was
like a whole thing, right?
Well, what I was surprised by, because I was prepared to pay for it, I thought it was like $10. But they copied right on down to the Xbox, like, we'll give you the first one for free, which I...
Oh, nice.
So I was like, oh, okay.
I wanted to change my PSN because mine's still the same from 6th grade. I remember actually when I got when I got my review code for the first Spider-Man on PS4, the PR agent was actually making fun of it because it was that like alternate cap for everything. Genocidal Warrior, it's garbage, bro.
Genocidal Warrior,
yeah, Genocidal Warrior. I get a capital I, so it looks like a lowercase L. It's really bad, right? I wanted to change it, but then I don't know if you guys can inform me if anything's changed since then. But I thought it was like, if I were to go back to my PS3, for example, which I actually do for Retro Rebound sometimes, and collect some trophies. Would I not be able to? Is my understanding of that incorrect? Are you still laughing at my name, man?
Because I'm building like this story of like running into just some 14-year-old kid on fucking Uncharted named after genocide. And just like, wonder like, who is this kid?
My dad was, it's funny because originally I grew up in a Christian household, right? So like my dad, here's the funny part, right? Is originally it was XX Fallen Lord XX, and my dad saw it. He was like, hell fucking no. I was like, bro, come on, it's cool. And so I had to go with Genocidal Warrior, and that's
Genocidal Warrior.
Yeah, he approved Genocidal Warrior. He did not approve Fallen Lord because I think he thought I was talking about God or something.
Oh my God! Oh, you can't go against the Lord.
God, that's so funny. Crusade Maddie.
Yeah, Crusade Maddie. Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking about. Was Crusades.
Anyway, I don't know if I can go back if I were to change my gamer tag or my PSN. Sorry, if that is something, would I lose the ability to get trophies on PS3? Or is there something I'm missing on that?
So they'll give you like this warning that before PS4, so like Vita and PS3, you might have functionality issues. And as far as I understand, and I haven't tried this or done this, so you'll have to look it up, is that you can apparently change between those names or whatever to like just make it work. But I did that knowing that I'm probably essentially done with PS3 and Vita at this point. Like from what I understand from, Moore's Law, Sony has PS3 backwards compatibility working on a game by game basis like they have for a while. It's just a lot of work. They have to do it on a game by game basis.
Bit of a trust fall then, it seems.
Yeah, exactly. It totally is. But I feel like Sony's been kind of surprising in some positive ways in the last few years. And so I'm like, certainly, you have to iron this out. Like you can't leave this entire generation isolated. This is the generation, by the way, that's most important to your core audience, probably, that came to you at that time when things were darkest. So yeah, it's a little bit of a trust fall. Yeah, no doubt about it. But
I want to change it. I actually, I'm not saying this to excuse myself. I personally have my trophies and achievements hidden because typically when I get a review code, a publisher will always request like, please have it disabled. Actually, when I was playing Jedi Survivor, I snitched on myself. It was actually displayed on my Discord. Someone in the LSM Discord tagged me. Was like, yo, Maddie. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't playing anything. But yeah, you got, from what I've seen, they want it hidden because people get spoilers out of it. And like Xbox, for example, like auto upload achievement clips. I think PlayStation does the same thing when you get a trophy and it automatically uploads. So you got to disable all that shit because otherwise just big moments in the game will spill out. But otherwise, when I stop reviewing games, I personally plan on turning it off. I think it's suspect when you're like we'll say a beat writer or something and you have it hidden. I think that's a little strange because it's not like me where I'm, right now I'm in like the review gauntlet. I'm going on to probably my third review where it's like, just keeping it disabled is in my best interest. But for some of these folks, keeping it off when you may review like 3 games a year is a little more questionable.
Yeah. And I will say I'm specifically talking about the Clout Warriors. I want to see your trophies. Let me see them. Let me see those trophies.
I got to get my platinum trophy count up. It's been stagnant. I think I got like 39. Like that's
pretty good. It's better than most, I think.
It's okay. Like I used to get them a lot more. Like I haven't got one in a year or two, probably. But the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster trophies look very tantalizing.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah. You said you got Final Fantasy 1?
Yeah, I did one already. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
But it's quick because the quality of life. I didn't cheat. I didn't turn up like the modifiers, but there is a really nice quality of life feature to auto battle.
So good. Yeah.
Which cuts, I think, 5 hours off the game probably. And it's already a short 15 to 20 hour game. So I think I beat it in 12 hours or something like that. Wow. And 2 of those hours were spent grinding for a war mech for the full bestiary. Famous Final Fantasy 1 problem. Am I right? Okay. The one thing I wanted to say also as we exit this question, and then I want to talk about PlayStation. You guys have time, right? To talk a little bit more? We've only gone for an hour. I guess. Okay, cool. Yeah. And this is political, but I'm bringing it up for a reason because I think it's so interesting and so weird. The 2024 election is shaping up to be Joe Biden versus Donald Trump again, in which, according to an NBC poll that came out on Sunday, 70% of people in the United States, not anyone, including 51% of Democrats, don't want Joe Biden to run for president again. So 7 out of 10 people are saying, don't do it. And then he declares he's running anyway today, right? And 60% of people don't want Donald Trump to run again. So 6 out of 10 people
Mm-hmm.
So a vast majority of people are telling these two people, the political parties, they don't want you, and they're doing it anyway. And it shows a powerlessness on behalf of, I think, people to stay informed and get their information, and remain active. And I think that it's kind of like gaming's a microcosm of the greater society, where if we don't want to be run roughshod over by organizations and companies, in this case, publishers and developers and politicians that interfere in our industry and all these things, then we must remain more active and instigate more of an adversarial relationship between us and the power centers, because it's clear that in politics, no one gives a shit what anyone thinks. And if that's true, then I can't even imagine what business is going to turn like in the United States if you don't have people, commentators, honest brokers, analysts, critics, and everyone speaking from places of power, prestige, and confidence, getting things right, being respectable, and all the rest. And that was something I wrote in my notes that I just wanted to bring up, because it's like, I see a stat like that and I'm like, wow, the people have never been more powerless. And if that's true in a civic way, then you must be getting run roughshod by corporations and businesses and these publishers that are lying about things and releasing subpar products and all this kind of stuff. So that's why I think that the rise of fanboyism and the vacuum of dying media really matters, and that hopefully people like us, and there are many others that do a great job, fill that void. Because otherwise you're just going to have companies doing what they want, an obfuscating cloud of people that root for them, and then everyone below them getting whatever they get. And that's why I wanted to bring that up. I hope it makes sense.
Absolutely does. Yeah.
Finally, I wanted to talk about PlayStation 5. And I posed this to the guys before we began. And I want to go around the horn. And Cog, I want to start with you, I guess, which is PlayStation 5 the most mysterious console ever midway through what would proceed as its full generation? We're in year 3. And we don't know very much about what it's doing. We know a few games coming out, first and second party. They look pretty cool. But we don't even have gameplay for these games. We don't know. We also have some rumors like Helldivers and others that are coming but haven't been announced. And I find it interesting that it's doing so well, like extraordinarily well, considering all of that. I'm wondering how you interpret that. Is PlayStation like some sort? Is PlayStation reaching another level of societal impact in some way, where people are buying it at levels even higher than PS4, which is unbelievable to me, especially in a console constrained environment, bad economy, inflation, making your money worthless, and the console itself being more expensive. I'm just curious what you make of its success right now, because you almost can't blame Sony for not saying anything, because they're like, well, why get in our own way? There's no reason.
Yeah. They run a very, very tight ship, and I always, there's a part of me as a gamer that's frustrated with them, because I'm like, man, give us a damn roadmap or something. But at the same time, the success speaks for itself, right? So to me, the way I look at them, and I feel the way they look at themselves, is almost this prestige luxury brand. And it's to the point now, because the track record is what it is, and the base is used to, quality games. You had, Ragnarok, Turismo, you had a strong, year last year. So the way I look at it is, you have the quality games. Now the stock is there, right? So the stock issues are kind of, outside of the, I'm going to call it a flub, but the PSVR 2 situation obviously wasn't to their expectation initially. But for the most part, it's been smooth sailing. I think the thing that I admire the most is you rarely hear the PlayStation leak. You rarely hear, hey, this is coming. Exactly. This is what they're going to say. Here's the whole show notes of the upcoming May, blah, blah, blah. It's rare. It's rare for them. So I think they do a good job there. And then, from a quality standpoint, we have to give them credit. Like Maddie was, talking about a lot of Xbox frustration right now, is that, a lot of people have been told to wait. The games are coming. The games are coming. And then when the wait is there, it seems like sometimes there's an asterisk. Outside of Hi-Fi Rush, which was a phenomenal stealth drop, right? Which was super quality, like, okay, Xbox, this is what we want to see. There doesn't seem to be that consistent put together a string of W's consecutively without a hitch kind of thing. Whereas PlayStation seems to be very smooth, very steady for the most part, and I also feel, this is going to be a little controversial, but I do feel that when they do something that is, I would say, not consumer friendly or, they are allowed, they have the cachet that some people will rationalize and say, you know what? Yeah, they're charging extra for this, $10 for this upgrade. But it's going to be good, guy. Like it's almost that feel. You know what I mean? It's very, country club. It's very. The last point I'll say is this: it's like, look at who they advertise to. Look at who they give coverage to. It's not. It's like we're on GQ. We're giving it to Washington Post. We'll get once in a while, but it's a whole different stratosphere. And I think that's the way they look at them. They look at that brand as something bigger. When you hear Jim Ryan talk, they're not satisfied with just the core sphere of gaming. They want this to expand. And to their credit, you look at something like, The Last of Us TV show, which is amazing, right? I mean, on HBO, and how that's doing for them. So they've made the right moves. I think, to me, the question that I'm going to challenge them, just like I challenge Xbox with #JustOne, I'm going to challenge them on multiplayer games. I don't want to hear, woe is me, we can't do anything we need Call of Duty, oh my God, we will die. I don't want to hear that. I love the Fire Sprite move. I think that was fantastic. I think that whatever they saw, for them to secure that entire studio was a big statement. And to me, a course correction from kind of things where they've worked with studios and then, the studio released a game and then they acquire. These last 4 or 5 acquisitions have not been that. They have been, to me, pivoting, in my opinion, as a proactive move if Microsoft gets Activision Blizzard King. So I look at that as something as securing and fortifying a weakness. But overall, it's been phenomenal for them. I mean, they're blasting PS4 records. That's insane to me, the success. So yeah, it's not stopping. It's not stopping. And they're even pivoting now with the cloud stuff. I'm seeing them start to really, take an interest there. So they're positioned themselves pretty well for this generation. And all I would say is that Microsoft better not let this get too out of hand. Because right now,
2-1, baby.
Woo, in their regions, yeah, they got to be careful. So yeah, that's my overall assessment right now.
Yeah, I think it's a sound one. I think it's interesting because the Fire Sprite move was good and probably, except for Housemarque, the most, because that one made a lot of sense more recently, but the most maybe intimate relationship that they had previously in some way, because they did do some stuff with Fire Sprite. But what was interesting about Fire Sprite to me was I had never seen a satellite studio get purchased by Sony along with them, because they incorporated Fabric, which doesn't really count as a first party team. Sony doesn't count them. They count 20 now. So that's clearly not Fabric as one of them, but they definitely did see something they liked there. And we know London Studios working on their own thing. And it to me, it's like the equivalent of what they used to do is like a very Victorian 19th century courtship of these studios, right? Like if you're looking at a relationship, you do it all right. And you get, and you're positive it's all going to work and it's all great. But now it's like shotgun wedding. But the thing is that it's going to get even crazier, I think, because the studios they're gobbling up now, and it's obvious Deviation is going to be the other team that they buy. And I'm sure they're working that out. But once they're through Deviation, they're basically through all of their second party relationships that have been announced. So now you're either going to see acquisitions of just previous partners, maybe old teams that they want. But I mean, a lot of those teams, Quantic Dreams now with NetEase, Supermassive is with Nordisk. So like those guys are off the market. Ready at Dawn is dying or at least got cut in half. It seems like under Meta. So they're off the market, like all this other stuff. So I think that like for as shotgun wedding-ish as it seems now, I think it's going, you're not even, I think that's why I fear like for these acquisitions is I don't think that some of them are even going to make any sense. But I think that Sony is going to feel like they're put into some sort of corner, and we can wrap up as we talk about that. But I want to get around the horn here. Dustin, how are you feeling about PS5? We obviously talk about it on the show often, but I mean, what's your grand pronouncement here of how it's doing? It seems like it's killing it without an announcement. And yet we all know that something is very imminent. And I'll tell you, writing a PlayStation podcast and doing this flagship show is difficult sometimes because there's not a whole lot to talk about. Thank God half the show is not about video games.
Yeah, definitely. So I like what Cog was saying about the the prestige that they try to lay on. And I think that a lot of that is how they present themselves. And unfortunately, I think that extends also recently to how they price some of their products and present themselves. I was thinking about this last night because I want to get a DualSense Edge. Particularly, I was thinking about getting it for the new Star Wars game this weekend. Having those back buttons in a Souls-like, really helpful. It's like, man, $200. And then from looking at the reviews, I thought, man, the Elite 2 is clearly a superior controller that costs less. Like, clearly it's a better controller. It has better materials. It has more features. The case it comes in, everything about it is nicer. I mean, it doesn't have the DualSense features, but that's not really the point. So there's that. And I think also we've made arguments about, or at least I've made arguments about how the PSVR 2 isn't necessarily priced wrong, like for what it is, especially given the landscape. But still, a $550 accessory is no joke. But it's one of those things where it may feel unsavory in some ways. But again, this comes to that business perspective where if it's working and they're selling all this stuff, then it makes sense. And I think that the thing about, we've had a lot of conversations about PS5 Pro and upgraded consoles and stuff like that. And I know that there's a lot of really strong opinions on whether it should or shouldn't, or whether they would do it. And I see Sony looking at companies like Apple, who's selling a lot of consumers, not all of them, a new $1,000 phone every year. And so they're thinking, well, why wouldn't we try to sell people a few consoles a generation with modest speed increases? Now, obviously, there's a lot that comes with that as far as different SKUs for games and making sure that everything works right. But I would imagine that's definitely something that's in their interest, is to sell more things if people are willing to buy them, plain and simple. As far as their marketing, Colin, I think what you said it best is that why get in your own way at this point? Why reveal anything super early when you don't? It's shown that they don't really need to. And I think that it's weird. It's a bit of a catch-22 because I see how open Xbox is, and I think that's awesome in some ways, letting your fans know what to expect, getting the bad news. And, for Redfall, as much as it felt scummy in some ways, they also let everybody know up front. They didn't wait till launch day or something like that. That could have been the situation, which would have been worse. So I respect that they at least said something, because I know other companies wouldn't have necessarily done that. So to see them, Xbox be more open is cool, but I think that it also tends to hurt them. I think they have sometimes where they're too open, and then they got to walk back, or they got to delay the game, or delay Starfield again, and stuff like that. Which, that's one of those things for fans. It's like you can't have it both ways. You either are open and you deal with the consequences of that kind of open development.
Talk that talk, Dustin.
Yeah. So you deal with that, or you are okay with the silence, knowing that, or hopefully there's some kind of expectation that what they're going to tell you is eventually good and solid when it's announced. And I think what Cog was saying is that Sony does have that tight ship right now, where I'm trying to think as far as big first party games that they've delayed. It's been quite a while. Surely these games have been delayed internally. You think about like Last of Us Factions and stuff like that. Surely there are things that have been delayed internally, but never, or not never, but more recently, it just doesn't feel like there's kind of that air of from particularly Sony first party, that when a date's happening, it really seems to be happening, unless there's something I'm not thinking of, which is worrying me. But for like with Spider-Man, I feel like when that date gets dropped, it's like, that's when it's going to happen. I think Last of Us 2 had a bit of a delay, but that
God of War Ragnarok was delayed, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ragnarok was delayed.
Okay, I knew I was forgetting a big one.
That almost worked in their advantage because that was so obviously going to be delayed. Like, when they announced that during the showcase, they're like, it's coming later this year. It was just the title card. I'm like, we're not fucking, this is not coming out.
Everybody, like, the moment that trailer ended, everybody was like, that's not the real date. Like, anybody who's even remotely intelligent understood that game was going to be delayed. But there is a different air about it. Like, you're right, where it does feel kind of, there's a different context to it. And I think Sony's built enough goodwill over the last, I would say, like 8 to 9 years, where they can get away with things like that. And even if they do get away with things, it's usually just one delay. It's never like, Starfield, where it's delayed like, I don't even know, 10 times at this point. I don't even know.
Yes.
Well, here's the thing about
and hit us with the Nintendo. Damn.
For the God of War delay, it's still a delay. I'm not trying to discount it, but they never set a firm date. They set a window and then pushed it out of a window.
Right.
Which is I would say is a little different. It's still, don't get me wrong, it's still
I don't think it's that different.
Yeah, I was reading.
I don't think it's that different.
I was reading one. I was just reading the news. Yeah, it was announced in 2020 for 2021, and then Herman Hulst said it would come in 2022, and then it was dated. So yeah, it was pushed out of its window and delayed in that regard. But it's like, I feel like we know Spider-Man's coming in September. I think people are looking at September 8th as the date, right?
Oh,
like,
no, 2 days from Starfield.
Which I think was like the date some people had identified. I don't know if which is a Friday.
No.
And
there's some insider knowledge that's being dropped, Colin.
That's not insider knowledge. It's just like if you read Reddit or some of these random places where people talk and spread, these rumors, who knows where they come from. But a lot of this stuff ends up being true. So I always try to track where this stuff comes from.
I love checking the Reddit gaming leaks and rumors. That's like my favorite one to just scroll. Like,
Me too.
There's so much juicy stuff here.
They pick up our show every once in a while.
Dude, there's stuff that you have to go, yeah, we're there sometimes, and you have to, like Cog was saying earlier, like Sony doesn't leak, and it's true. A lot of leaks that we find out about, people had for a long time, but you couldn't verify them. Like that last Ronin game or whatever that's coming out in 2024, that leaked, but no one knew what the hell they were talking about. Like it was just like on some document, no one knew what the provenance of it was. And of course, the NVIDIA leak was probably the most catastrophic PlayStation related leak, although they didn't have anything to do with that. People used to leak shit to me all the time. I honestly don't know very much about anything. I was talking about on Discord that the only thing I feel like I've gotten wrong in my predictions and in my proclamations and all these things is I was told that Blue Point was working on some sort of Bloodborne or some sort of related project, which doesn't seem to be true. And that's wrong. But the problem with that is that the person who told me that is right about other things, has been demonstrably right about other things. And it makes me even more nervous about reporting things because it's like, who knows what changes, and you're always going to look like some sort of asshole. But I put myself out there and try to get it right. I get it right pretty much all the time because some person on Twitter made up something of like Colin, like I was like the third most reliable or fourth most reliable leaker or whatever. And I'm like, what did I get wrong? Like, what did I leak that was wrong? Some of the things haven't happened yet, but they will happen. And it's so I was a little confused about that, but nonetheless, let's get everyone else involved here. Who haven't we gone to yet? Maddie, have we gone to?
I haven't gone yet.
Yeah, please.
I guess to start off with, as far as console sales go, I mean, I guess I'll say the obvious thing, which is I think that's the product of the consistent high quality delivery that we were talking about. And, we've learned since then with the recent sales figures that have come out of Europe in the first quarter of this year, just how like dominant PlayStation has been and how Xbox was doing pretty good out the gate, but they've slowed down tremendously to the point where now they're being outsold 2-1 again, where it always goes back to what I said. Like Xbox they do really well for their own standards, but in the terms of the industry conversation, it's what I said about Redfall's 30 FPS. I'm like, if you guys want to be the silver medal specialist, like, okay, that's the position you've now put upon yourself, and you'll continue to live up to your own standards and just pretend outside of your bubble. You could not go above that. But yeah, I think this fate was really spelled out the moment that Xbox chose, let's launch our console without games. Now, obviously, if we saw what Halo Infinite launched as when it finally did come out in 2021, what it would have been like in 2020 probably would have been a disaster worth avoiding for sure. But it shows the lack of preparation. And when you're your everyday consumer and you just look at PlayStation's steady cadence, that's just like, it speaks for itself. Like, it's just going to bring them in. And Game Pass right now is this new thing. While people are adopting it, can only do so much to break from the norm that PlayStation continues to follow. So I guess the place where I see it deviating past mid-generation here is as Xbox does set up to deliver, if they can start to win people back and turn some of those sales figures in their favor. But also for PlayStation, we still are aware that they're looking to deliver 10 live service games, I think it was, by 2026. And one thing that I think is loved by PlayStation is they have this style of game, right? As Cog would call it, the just one, the third person, over the shoulder, open worldish like experience. And they all have their own different flavors and mechanics and lore and all that stuff, but they kind of follow a formula. And I don't say that in a bad way. Like, I've kind of fallen off of them, but it's not a bad thing. In fact, seeing the success of God of War Ragnarok and Horizon has only proven that, like, it works for people. But they're known for this thing, and I'm curious what happens when they break from that and they start saying, well, we're going to do live service now. And
yeah,
like Colin talked about, taking yourself off the board. Like, I imagine Factions will be very good. I imagine it's also one of these live service games, and that can maybe set the tone for what to expect, right?
And I also think it's going to be its own game. Like, I think it's going to be some sort of Last of Us 2.5 or something, where it's going to have a story and a single player mode and all that.
That'd be great. That would be great.
I feel that. Yeah, we'll see.
But I feel like, once you start seeing these big teams going in on these live service games, I think it, again, I'm curious what the fan reception will be if they're not all that great. Because Xbox, we've been in that pocket, right? We've seen how Halo Infinite's gone. We've also seen how well Forza Horizon 5 went. We're going to see how Contraband goes and so on and so forth. Sea of Thieves,
Avalanche,
quietly one of the most dominant games for Xbox. So it's going to be interesting to see how the conversation shifts as, I guess, Xbox and PlayStation kind of get in the same bubble, where Xbox does have this balance now of live service and single player, a lot of single player in development, where I'm wondering where PlayStation stands by the end of this generation, where I could sort of see it. And granted, PlayStation was like firing on all cylinders by the end of the PS3 generation, but also 360 stopped producing. So I could see this sort of being one of those 360 PS3 gens where it kind of ends in that even split, because there's no denying that regardless of how the PR is about Xbox, that they are doing a lot better compared to Xbox One. They're delivering some really exciting experiences. They're very much in tune with the indie community, which reminds me of 2014 with PlayStation, where they just had every good indie game. And that does count for something, especially when you're trying to feed a subscription service. So I do see it kind of balancing out where I think these two will kind of be more equal by the end of the gen. But right now, it's definitely not looking pretty for Xbox. But for PlayStation, I mean, it just goes to show, I was falling off the template, but a lot of people love it. A lot of people love this formula they have. And I'm just wondering what the reaction is if they shake that up at all.
I will say this, is that you speak to something that's important about gaining fans back, is that I think that's always possible, because I think that consumers are fickle, and they should be. Why would you buy something over and over again if it wasn't to your liking? Who does that with anything else? But then when you see the better thing in the store, you hear about the better experience from a friend, then that does tend to matter. And I just remind people that PlayStation 2 sold 150 million units, probably an insurmountable number by any console today. Maybe Switch will get there, but I think it's teetering out too soon. We'll see.
Yeah.
But even if it gets there, that's such an impressive amount. And all it took was Xbox 360 coming out a year earlier than PS3, caught a bunch of people that just wanted the new console. And then by the time PS3 came out and then shit itself for probably 18 months, they just kept piling on. I think it was something like 30 months in a row they outsold PS3 in the United States, like something insane. It's all the numbers that you couldn't even imagine. Mm-hmm. And so if that happened once, I don't see why it wouldn't happen again, or why I wouldn't say wouldn't, but couldn't happen again. I think I always get even more fascinated by the idea of a third competitor, because I don't consider Nintendo's doing their own thing incredibly successfully. I think they're a multimedia company now. I don't think they're really a video game company truly anymore, now that they're doing their theme park and they're going to obviously embrace film more. And they should.
That way. That's a good point.
Yeah, like they're Disney to me. And I think
to the CMA this type of discussion about Nintendo. I'm writing this down. High performance console.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what I mean. I don't have any insider information on Nintendo. Obviously, I've never had an insider at Nintendo or on the Nintendo studio, so I don't know what they're doing or have any insight into it. I just look at them as kind of playing on their own field, and they're going to do it very successfully and very well. They're pioneering things, but they're also just doing their own things quietly, making their Pokemon games, making their Animal Crossing games, Animal Crossing selling 30 million units. It's like, okay, so you're doing your own thing, but I'm always fascinated by the idea of a third competitor. I don't like an Apple and they tried in the 90s. They had a console in the 90s. It was a failure.
The Pippin, right?
Yeah, the Pippin, right. But I'm always interested in that too, if there's like any room. But what I really see are these two juggernauts kind of coming more and more ahead. And that's, Chris, I wanted to ask you about your feeling on how PlayStation's doing and what you expect in the coming months. And will they be able to sustain this? And when will we hear more? I mean, it's kind of frustrating doing our show because we should by right have more to talk about. Back in the day, it was so much easier to cover PlayStation because they'd announce 17 games at a time. And then you could just comb through the fucking wreckage for years. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I just think they're in a really good spot right now. They've got a lot of inertia and a lot of goodwill, and I think that's going to carry them probably well into towards the end of the generation. I don't see why not. I do think this influx of live service games is going to be it has the potential to be a massive turning point for a lot of people, because I do think a lot of people's expectation of what a PlayStation game is not going to be met by these live service games by nature of just the kind of throwing shit at a wall just to see what sticks type of development that these kinds of games necessitate. We've talked about it before, but a lot of these live service games are no doubt being developed with the understanding that many, if not most of them, will fail. And the hope is ideally that at least one of them sticks, even as much of a fraction as Fortnite does, to justify the amount of R&D and development that went into all the other games that didn't succeed. And so to me, that's probably going to be a big switch up in the conversation, because where Xbox falters a lot, I think, in delivering, single player games and specifically even, lately, God Christ, multiplayer even. I do think there is something to be said about the variety that is there. Like something like Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves are like low key some of my favorite experiences like this in the last 10 years, like easily. And I do wonder, if Sony could jump into this conversation, jump into this fight in a way that matches that. And if they don't, what that would say, like how that conversation would be like, well, Sony tried this live service and they're fine, but it's not as good as Sea of Thieves. Like, I wonder, like that's a genuine possibility, where they might have something in this area that they just weren't really being competed with in a long time. So I don't know. I think my confidence in Xbox is like very, very low right now, just because I think Redfall looks cool. I've enjoyed Halo Infinite sincerely, but like I just think they botched that so deeply. Now Joe Staten is gone. Crazy. Yeah. Like, didn't he go to Netflix or something? It's insane.
Yeah, he's working on a game.
Netflix. I call it the Stadia energy. He's riding the single ship with a nice fat bag, and he'll be out of there and set up for life. Sure. Make a studio after that.
Nice, smart. But and so I don't know. Even just the way that they manage some of their older IP, like, it's baffling to me that there's no Gears collection. Fucking like really weird.
Yeah, that's an easy one, right? Easy win.
Where is Fable after all this time? Like, where is Hellblade? Like, what is the news on this stuff? Like, if you're going to announce stuff this early, like, why do that in the first place?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think there's still some time for them to right the ship, but like, I just think they've made some really confusing decisions, especially with like key components and like key franchises that they really shouldn't have been trifling with. And I think it's going to hurt them for the foreseeable future. I mean, I'm always the person who likes to root for the underdog generally. Like, I'm a big underdog person, but I do have to admit, Xbox being the underdog for this long is getting boring. Like, I want them to hit. Just so, if anything, just so we have a more interesting conversation. That's more than just this, where it's like, oh, maybe next year. Like it's getting exhausting. But yeah, I don't know. I think PlayStation's in a good spot. I think they're probably really happy that they don't have to say anything to sell. And I think a lot of Xbox's future success and a lot of the evening out that Maddie was talking about is probably going to happen in that influx of live service titles. Like whether or not those hit or not is probably going to be a big defining factor. And also whether or not people kind of get tired of the over the shoulder, like the just one. Like I know I'm kind of fatigued by it. But I also know that I can't play a game that isn't 60 frames, and apparently that doesn't matter to a lot of people either. So like, what the fuck do I know?
They also needed to deliver KOTOR remake if they have any chance. That's all.
That would be that'd be pretty amazing.
What the fuck happened, man? What the fuck happened? Like,
wrong team, I think.
I actually have a tear in my eye. Like, what happened, man?
Can I say something? Can I say something sincere? Like, it is weird to me that we still have heard jack shit about Fable.
Yes.
Like, why even announce it?
Who's making a Playground, right?
Yeah, Playground.
Yeah,
which sounds interesting.
Yeah,
like that's I'm super interested in that.
I know.
And just nothing.
Sorry, go on.
No, that's it.
I was gonna say the only thing I'll say in Xbox's defense on that is I know they've asked Playground to reveal it a number of times. Like they've even got out, I think 3 separate times. Matt Booty said, like, I've circled around. I said, if we want to reveal this looks amazing. Can we do it? And Playground's actually the one who's like stiff arming them. So I give credit that Xbox is allowing them to, like, you know, pretty much tell them fuck off and figure out something else to reveal in the meantime.
That's
smart.
Fair. That's fair. That's smart. It's not so much that we haven't seen it yet. It's more the fact that they announced it so early. Like that's
I agree with that. Oh god.
Like
yeah.
After canceling another one, right? They canceled another Fable game, right? And then they
canceled Fable Legends, I think, a while back.
Yeah, we don't talk about that. Yeah.
That was dark times.
Yeah. I don't know what was going on, man.
We got Gears of War Pop, but we didn't get Fable.
Don match for energy, bro.
Don. I want to go around the horn as we close out, and I want to ask you guys what you think how Sony will react. Let's just to this ABK thing. So, and we have no reason to know anything. By the way, anyone who tells you they have insider information on what's selling or what's going to happen is like lying. I mean, I couldn't imagine a more lawyered up situation than 2 multi-billion-dollar corporations having some sort of economic deal with each other. That kind of stuff just does not leak. So I don't think anyone truly has any insight at all. But based on reading the tea leaves and everything, let's assume for our show here, for this exit question, that the Activision deal goes through free and clear. I don't think Sony is going to sign any deals with Microsoft because I don't think Sony believes that they're going to take Call of Duty away from them anyway. We'll see what happens with all the rest of the games, but this is a huge boon for Game Pass. Game Pass will undoubtedly have something like World of Warcraft and all these other things that I think will be really interesting. I mean, I'm fascinated, by the way, just as this has nothing to do with anything, but the idea of like a game like WoW joining Game Pass and then just being like, you have a Game Pass subscription, you're on WoW, and that's just like subsuming millions of people on their subscription service.
With Valorant, with League, you unlock all the champs in League, which is a huge deal.
It's going to be big. I mean, there's no doubt. So the way I view it, guys, is that Sony tried obviously to stop this reality from happening. I think that they're right in some way, and I'm actually going to have Jaffe on to talk about this because he disagrees that, you know, of the destructive nature of value having to do with subscription models and all of that. But the die is cast, like it's over, right? So this looks like it's going to happen, and for the concept of what we're talking about here, it did happen. What does Sony do? How do they react? Because my assumption is that Sony has to now aggressively court at least a few big publishers to at least foreclose the ability of Microsoft getting any of their content on Game Pass. Like if you're looking at it from a strategic point of view, you have to kind of start grabbing barrier territories around your core product to stop them from getting any closer. And I think that Sony is probably going to have to do that, not only in developers, which I think they'll more aggressively pursue, but like I said, deviation seems to be a lock, but publishers, and Square Enix sticks out to me. This is where there's smoke and fire kind of for me. Just their leaving Xbox seems so conspicuous that I can't help but read into it. That means something. Yeah. It could very well just mean that they looked at it and said, we don't make money here, so we're not going to do it anymore. I mean, it could literally be that simple. it could also be something of like, we're preparing for the possibility of a merger or of an acquisition. I mean, they already streamlined themselves significantly. And I'm sure Sony, by the way, looks at, if they were interested in Square Enix, something at like Tomb Raider and all this, and been like, maybe we should have held on to that. But nonetheless, it seems like they're streamlining. And what I would think, if I were Sony, what I would do, and I'll kick it over to you guys, let's start with you, Maddie, is I'd reinforce the Japanese-ness first and foremost of Sony. I say 2 of 4 of the following are in play, right? Like any 2 of the following 4, although I think you would want more than others, is Square Enix, Koei Tecmo, Bandai Namco, and Capcom.
Yeah.
And I think
if they got Capcom, 2
of the 4, I think would be the legitimate. I think Sony, I could conceive of a future of Sony getting all of them. And I don't know that would be conceivable within the confines of Japanese law. I think it probably would. I don't know how others would push back on that in regulatory markets around the world. They no doubt would, but Sony will have the excuse now of being like, this combined 4 publishers, just as an example, who the hell knows what's going to happen? These combined 4 publishers in our new coalition are a fraction of the size of Activision Blizzard. So what is the problem? And I think that, so now they have the ultimate excuse. If I were them, I'd try to consolidate at home first and then look abroad. And I know people think Take-Two is the interesting choice. I think that's huge. By the way, Sony has no capital problems. People say Sony doesn't have money to do this and the other thing. You think Sony can't get a loan? You think Sony doesn't have like massive leverage to get merger money on the table from a bank or from outside? I mean, that's no problem. They can even raise money internally too. So I don't look at it that way, but I think the most obvious Western target is Ubisoft, just because they're the lowest hanging fruit and they're the most vulnerable. So anyway, Maddie, what do you think about what Sony could possibly do when this all goes through?
The Square Enix one always pops up, but I come at it from a different angle because I agree with the concept that fortifying the, as you put it, the Japanese-ness of the box is great for the brand identity. But it's interesting because they've kind of stepped away from a little bit of that, right? Like they don't really in the first party focus on that. They've almost westernized their approach. And so that's where I wonder about someone like Square, because it does feel like in the tea leaves it's there. Like, oh, they're leaving Xbox. We've heard reports. I've even said as much that like Phil is pretty ticked about like some of the lacking of games from Square. There's something foul with that relationship. And so it kind of spells out like they're going in one direction and Xbox going the other, right? But what I look at if I'm PlayStation is, do you want to pay for the thing you already have? Like Square Enix already is giving you Final Fantasy. I don't know the contracts, the money being exchanged, if they're even having to do that. But you have Final Fantasy 14, you have 16. Something niche like Live Alive is coming to you guys after Switch, of course, but PC, not Xbox. So do you need to go out and spend millions, billions on something that's already being given to you? I don't know. Capcom is the tough one because they were on such a low, but after Resident Evil 7, they've just been on the mountaintop now where I don't know if they could even fathom selling. The interesting Japanese target that Cog and I always talk about in a post-acquisition era for Activision is Sega. We think Sega's kind of boning up to do some type of sell-off at some point because number one, like their purchase of, I think it's Rovio, the Angry Birds mobile studio, suspect. And we got some write-ins on Defining Duke. They're like, what do you think this means? Is Sega off the table? And Cog and I are like, they're more on the table than ever now because at least in the eyes of Xbox, they anytime they talk about Activision, Blizzard, they talk about King, they talk about Blizzard. They very rarely talk about Activision itself outside of Call of Duty, whether that's to not drag attention to other popular franchises that they own, because like the mainstream media seems very surprised that Diablo 4 was a hit thus far. But I think that makes Sega really attractive to Xbox. So I bring all of that up because I think if I'm PlayStation, you might, if you're going to get aggressive, want to swing a protective purchase. We don't really need Sega. We already got Square, but we don't want Xbox to get them. So that's where, and I don't know if that's how the business would work, but if you want to keep your competitor from boning up on one end, maybe you go after someone they may want, which sounds crazy, but
no, that doesn't sound crazy to me at all. First of all, that happens in sports, especially in drafts all the time.
Yeah, and, you get the guy you don't want your competitor to get.
Right. And Yeah, like it's like why you don't trade in your division and shit. You don't want things to like come back and bite you.
Exactly.
And yeah, so I personally agree that Sega could be on the table too for Microsoft or Sony. I kind of kept them out of my own conversation just because they seem to be. It's like Warner Brothers a couple of years ago when it looked like they were going to sell out, and then they had these hits and all of this, this great momentum going on, and they're like, oh, wait a minute. And I think it was a really smart move. You get something like Gotham Knights and you get Hogwarts Legacy and you get also, all of that comes along with that. And I look at a situation with Sega where I'm like, well, they're probably like, wait, we just had like the best-selling Sonic game. The Sonic movies are huge. Persona's bigger than ever.
Yeah.
We have like it's like
Football Manager.
I think Sega. I think Sega's on the cusp of an upswing. Personally, like I think like there's a lot of signs that are there, and I think Jet Set Radio is probably
that's real. I mean, that was in the Persona 3 leak, so
I think
that will be interesting too.
So that I don't know, man. I think no, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in.
No, go ahead. No, you can go, please. What are your thoughts?
I was gonna say that was the first thing that came to my mind was like Sega. It's like why wouldn't you jump onto this? First of all, you got like multimedia with the Sonic movies, and like Lord knows what you could do with even Persona in that realm. But also just it's smart when you see a ship rising to be like, yes, like that's a smart thing to get in bed with. Whether or not the Square Enix thing is weird to me because like I think you're right in the sense that why pay for something if you're already getting it, especially if they're already kind of like not really present on Xbox as an ecosystem. Still super weird to me that that Final Fantasy VII Remake was actually just straight up announced for it and then just it never came.
They obviously reworked the deal at some point.
Yeah, clearly, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think Sega's a promising thing outside of the obvious Square. Ubisoft, I don't know.
I just think you start the thing with me, Chris, with Ubi. The thing with me with Ubi is that I like some of their stuff, obviously, but to me, it's like you find. I mean, it's gonna be a fucking bloodbath if that happens. Because to me, I'd be like, you come in, you pay your price of several $1 billion, whatever it's gonna cost you to get Ubisoft's IP, and you basically you have to shut down pretty much all of the teams, except for I would imagine Ubisoft Montreal. You wouldn't shut down Massive. You wouldn't shut down Ubisoft Toronto. You probably wouldn't shut down Milan and a couple of these other teams. But they employ more than 20,000 people. Ubisoft employs more people than PlayStation.
Yeah.
So, but they're in such bad shape that I feel like they're wounded. Like it's so obvious someone's going to come grab them, and I don't want it to be like some sort of consortium fucking bullshit like Embracer. I'd rather them straight up go to Xbox. Like I'd rather this straight up just be like, fine.
Xbox already got one headache to figure out.
We're good.
That's the one I don't imagine
and I'm Lord Acquisition.
But imagine PlayStation, and again, I say this from the position. I like playing with the war game kind of aspect of it because I think people know. For me, I really do believe that these mergers and acquisitions are generally stupid, and that now they're only happening out of necessity because the domino is pushed by someone, but no one had to push the domino to begin with. So now they're all buying each other up. So it's not the reality I want to see happen, but I look at it and I see a Ubisoft, for instance, and Sony saying like, well, we can get Assassin's Creed, Tom Clancy, and everything Tom Clancy, including really sticky games like Rainbow Six Siege and the future of the Division. We'll get involved with the no doubt millions of selling Avatar game that's going to come out from Massive later in the year. And we just really get rid of and we get Rayman and all these random things, but we get rid of the bloat. Right. And so if I were Sony, I'd look at it and be like, that's a potential opportunity, but I don't know if it does what it needs to do for them either. I don't know that they need more IP. What they need is more pipelines to get games out to different audiences, which is why I think I'm like less distressed about the 10 games as a service as time goes on, because it's not costing Sony Productions or PlayStation Studios, I shouldn't really say, to be more concise, anything, because the games are coming mostly from the studios that you either don't give a shit about or are new. So it's like, well, I don't get London. I don't give a. What are you gonna get, SingStar or something? It's like we're years away from London doing something like The Getaway, but they are doing their fantasy game, so it's like, okay, cool. Or you get like maybe Pixel Opus will do something, or whoever. It looks like Pixel Opus is probably doing a Sony animated thing, maybe for Spider-Man, some people think. So we'll see about that. But
there's a rumor at some point that it was Sly Cooper, and I was losing my fucking mind. That was
that's why I think Sucker Punch felt the need to say, like, they wrote that letter that was a little condescending, maybe not, where they were like, you know.
Oh, it was, I felt insulted. Yes, yeah. I felt hurt.
Well, Sly Cooper and Infamous are ours, basically. And it's like, well, that's cool. There was a fourth Sly game that wasn't from you. But yeah, fair enough. Cog, what do you think about what's going on here?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as we presume the ABK deal goes down, it's going to be a huge boom for Xbox. That's going to be a huge boom. That's going to be, for as much as I don't care about Call of Duty anymore, the casual market having Call of Duty on that platform in a service like Game Pass is going to be big for them. And I think that will kind of reinvigorate the Series S, specifically as a low entry point. I think Sony is going to react. And then also, obviously we spoke with Hogue, and Microsoft is not going to stop after ABK. There's still going to be more acquisitions. So I think Sony will get defensive with maybe one or two, maybe a potentially Square. I think that makes sense. But I actually think they'll pivot differently, almost in the realm of like how they did Nixxes. So Nixxes to me was kind of like, okay, we have to shear up PC ports. We have a deficiency there. I think I wouldn't be surprised to see I know Herman has talked about mobile, maybe some partnership with something there. I think cloud's going to come back into play because I think the ABK deal has made them extremely adversarial with Microsoft. So I think that partnership, if we've noticed, it hasn't really bear any fruit anymore.
The letter of intent or whatever, right? They signed, yeah.
Exactly. So it was like, okay, we'll give you the sensors and AI. You give us Azure backbone. But now that the mud has been slinging, Sony may say, hey, Amazon, hey, Google. Google's been a clear opponent to the deal, and as much as people clown Stadia, the tech is phenomenal. One thing I'll say about the tech is, so I could see situations where Sony tries to fortify themselves there in the cloud and move away from Microsoft in that space. So I predict smaller, studios. The multiplayer thing may continue. I do think my prediction was that the Bungie and now the Firesprite is, to me, shoring up the future in that space. I love those moves by Sony. I know Kyle doesn't like the non-organic nature. But
there's no organic acquisitions after Deviation that you could even describe as any. Now they're just going to be one night stands. I mean, like, exactly.
It's like, hey, you're looking hot. We need this. Let's go. Yep. So to me, but it's smart. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? You got to shore up your weaknesses. You have to future-proof yourself so that you are not caught out there when the eventual shift does happen, whether it be 5-10 years from now. I know, latency is what it is for certain games, but the shift is there with cloud and mobile, and I don't think they want to be deficient there. So that's what I see, something there in those spaces, and the only immediate one may be Square to me, because it just seems that relationship from the Kyle, you remember, like from the PlayStation 1 days and Final Fantasy 7 and the way Sony was kind of betrayed that weird relationship with Nintendo, and here comes Square. So I always felt those two were always synonymous to me. So
Square sort of abandoned Nintendo.
Yes,
that's like one of the unwritten kind of pieces of history. Was like they were just like, no, we're out. Like we can't. Yeah. But people might remember that Final Fantasy 7, I want to say, was like what they were calling the 7th Final Fantasy game was running on N64, right? Didn't they have like Final Fantasy 6 sprites that they were using, and like people have to look it up. It's very weird, like that. Like, and they were just like, "No, we're out," and kind of betrayed Nintendo because they couldn't. And I mean, look how big Final Fantasy 7 was. It was still 3 black bottom discs, so it was just way too big for a cartridge. But nonetheless, it does seem like that's in the cards. I'm tantalized by it for Sony's sake because it gets them involved with Nintendo and almost reliant on Nintendo in some way, which I think is a good client relationship for them to have as well. And like courting Nintendo in some way, which will almost never happen, but getting closer to them and kind of putting away this old nonsense, I think once and for all is good for these brands. And you see it because things like Octopath Traveler 2 came to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, which was a great mystery. And they didn't even chart, I think, the first month they were out, but you see them on NPD like on PSN, I should say. You see them on NPD at like number 10 and you're like, well, people are buying Switch games, man. Like it's not a bad latent business to just have some money coming in from your rival platform. So that seems to be logical to me too, but who knows, man? I mean, everyone makes really compelling arguments. But Dustin, what do you have to say about this?
So I think all of that is definitely like everything as far as what you guys are saying about Square Enix is 100% possibility. I'm not laying this out as this is what I think, but it's an alternative theory, which I think is also possible, is that we've seen Sony do what I would call defensive investments. I think Discord is the number one, where they went in and they thought, we can't lose this. We don't necessarily need to own them, but we got to make sure that it's something that we can get in on, and made a large investment there. And then in addition to, while it's much smaller, but when they did their investment into Kadokawa, which is the company that owns From Software. Now, I believe that was under, let me see, I brought up a PlayStation Lifestyle article that is under 2%, so 1.93%. So pretty small, but still, you see these types of things where maybe they just want to buy some influence. And by the way, PlayStation Lifestyle, your article has a mistake. It says that Activision owns Sekiro, which is not true. That's in the hands of From Software. But
wow.
Anyway, it's I wonder if there's a situation. Of course, on Sacred Symbols, we say, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? Well, maybe you can make an investment in the cow. You don't need to own the cow, but you can just throw the farmer some money and have some kind of, maybe you can own the farm that owns the cow. Or so, I don't know. My analogy's breaking down. The point is, they can go and make an investment maybe in Square Enix that allows them to kind of operate on their own, but gives them enough influence to be able to, I don't know, in their minds, keep them off of Xbox permanently, and still work with Nintendo if that's something that would be a big, important thing for Square Enix. To me, I feel like that would make a lot of sense, just because I think that maybe, at least for me, I see a company like Microsoft, who owns a lot now and is having a hard time, at least from the outside, kind of managing all of that. And then we see, obviously, on a different perspective, Embracer as well. And I think that maybe Sony thinks we don't need to necessarily own all this stuff, but we have to be aggressive because of the landscape, like you guys were saying. So that would be my perfect situation. And not even one that I would necessarily be rooting for. It's just heavy investments into the companies that you work closest with and what makes sense, and not necessarily a feeding frenzy. But again, just an alternative take. It very well could be full acquisitions as well.
It's worth noting that at 20 teams, which Sony is at now, at a generous 5-year development cycle per team, assuming each team is only making one game, which is not true, that's literally one game a quarter. So you would think that that's enough. And plus you have teams that are working on 2, 3, 4 games. So, and if you still have those incubated 5-year cycles internally, that should be more than enough. So there is an argument to be made that you already have enough. Now you just need to, plus they've codified these second party relationships that are becoming more serious with Koei Tecmo and others, although Koei Tecmo will work with anyone, which I think is one of the most appealing things about them, is how like freelance they are. But it'll be very, very interesting to track this and see what happens. My hope is that nothing happens, but I think that that's, if not naive, definitely unrealistic and probably bad strategy for Sony. At this point, to say like, no, we're not going to do anything. It's like, well, you see your competitor gobbling up things and putting them into, and putting yourself in massive danger of not having, being foreclosed, as they like to say in the legal documents, from these different games. And it's like, if I look at that and I'm Sony, I'm like, yeah, we got to do something, I guess. But I don't think that they're definitely not playing at home. They definitely don't want to be on this field at all. But they're forced into it. And I think they have to hope that the quality is there and that it matters most. I think the things they have going for them in a permanent way is like PlayStation is just a very well-respected Apple-like brand. I think that they are corollaries to each other. And that has like a low level of inertia, regardless of what happens now. It's just going to do its thing. And I think you see that with how well the console is selling, even though nothing is like, there's no future for it. And that's why I say like PlayStation 5 has no future, literally no future right now. But like, we don't know. Of course it does have one, but we literally don't know it. And it's so strange and so interesting. So there is that working for them, and the quality of the games, if they can keep it up, we don't know we truly don't know what a PlayStation quality AAA multiplayer game looks like in the modern era, because we haven't seen one. Sony their forays into multiplayer in the PS4 era with things like Killstrain and Drawn to Death and everything, those are not AAA games. Drawn to Death probably was made for $10 million or less. I would imagine something like that. And you have like Killzone Shadowfall, which was, pretty good actually, and in the previous era you have MAG and SOCOM and all of these things. So we just have no conception of what any of that even looks like. And Maddie, I think you're the one who said it's like, well, The Last of Us Factions could be like this smash hit that proves that you could do a PlayStation game in multiplayer. And I don't know if you guys heard. I mean, you probably don't listen to the show, which is totally fine. You shouldn't. But my theory on this is that it's like a co-op game with a campaign like that. It seems like it takes place in San Francisco. It seems like it's always two people in the key art, right? I don't know. We'll see what happens, but
I'm very curious what they do with that game.
I'm very curious about it. Yeah,
because they could have a huge hit on their hands, and people could be like, "Oh shit, it's a AAA PlayStation multiplayer game," but you just can't define that right now because it doesn't exist.
I feel like in a way it's kind of parallel to where Xbox is with Starfield's launch, although not nearly as dramatic, where I always say like Starfield is the real tone setter for like what we should expect moving forward. Like it's kind of a statement move by Xbox. And I feel like for PlayStation, when Factions comes out, that's sort of the statement. Like here is the bar for quality. Like here is what as you put it, like a first party AAA multiplayer game from PlayStation Studios should look like. And this is what you're going to measure it up against every time.
Right.
So I'm just curious to see where they started off at.
Yeah, that honestly excites me.
Yeah.
I like to see them challenge in that space, to be honest, and both of them on their effective deficiencies.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think that you see that in some way, although more quietly, and it's definitely something that people contend is not necessarily true. But I kind of read it from the outside of like what's happened with Forza and Gran Turismo, where people. What I know for a fact is that like many of the most hardcore racing people don't even play on console anymore, which is something I learned when I had G28. I think that was his name, right? No, Z28 Gaming, who's the Gran Turismo YouTuber, and we had him on a couple times to talk about the game. And it's just like that series has kind of plateaued in some way, and it's been at a very high quality. Polyphony has always maintained this very high quality, and it sells very well, but it kind of didn't look in its rear view mirror. And Forza is this series that I think people contend is maybe better, or at the very least it's equivalent, and that should scare Sony, because what's the equivalent of, I mean, I'm not trying to be a dickhead, but what's the equivalent of The Last of Us? Or God of War Ragnarok? What's the equivalent of those? Or even Horizon? It's like, to me, if there's an equivalent, they're losing. And so that's something that they have to watch their back on. And of course, we need a first-person shooter.
I'll go out of pocket and say I think Plague Tale Requiem is the competitor to The Last of Us.
That is out of pocket. That's definitely out of pocket. But I will go out of pocket and say that. I'll allow that. All right, my friends. Well, I've taken up enough of your time. This was fun. I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to me today. Let's go around the horn and say goodbye to everyone. Dustin Furman.
Well, I wasn't expected to go first here on the round. Ending thoughts. Thanks. This has been fun. PlayStation, don't be going and buying Square Enix. We don't want that, even though it's probably going to happen. Also, I remember my final thought. I had it earlier and I almost forgot it. You talked about a third competitor. Sega, step up your game. Dreamcast 2. Bring it back.
We go back. They feeling themselves. They get back.
Same exact spec.
Okay.
Same.
Yeah. That'd be nice.
Dude, it's about the memory card, okay? That's
Windows CE, let's go.
Yeah. Love it. Tog, what are your closing thoughts?
Another crossover, great topics, great show. It was always fun, man. So, I got not much to add. Get to play some more games and get to check out some handheld devices.
I saw, sir.
Yeah,
an ally.
Handhelds. Yeah, I found an ally.
Chris,
that's all I got.
Closing comments.
Man, I'm just I'm still settling into having all my time back. So I've been jumping into as many video games as possible. I'm about like 5 hours into Final Fantasy VI. I played a shit ton of Hitman.
6.
Oh, 6.
Yeah. I played
That's
a shit ton of
Kefka action.
Kefka, yeah. It's the only one that I remember from when I was a kid. So like that was.
Where are you?
I was like, I should probably. Huh?
Where are you in it?
Oh, I don't know. I'm playing like 5 different games at the same time. But I'm pretty far into it. I think. I don't know. Because I'm speeding through the battling process a little bit because I'm like, all right, let's speed things up a bit. But I'm playing a shit ton of Hitman. Jumping back into the Hogwarts Legacy because that was something that I just wanted to jump in and finish. Vampire Survivors. I'm overdosing right now. On video. I got my Xbox running on my Series X on a CRT so I can play Vampire Survivors like an asshole.
Yeah.
I saw on your Insta story you were doing I think a Destiny 2 Crucible.
Yeah, I was doing
on the
Destiny
CRT.
2
That was cool.
Crucible on the
Nice.
and it wasn't bad at all, which is crazy.
Nice.
You're probably not the only person doing that either, but the other person's not doing it. Ironically, they're doing it in like an Eastern European bunker or something like that. Yeah. Maddie, do you have any closing comments?
Just great episode. Good to talk with the boys about what's going on in the games industry. I'll admit my mood sank a little bit when I remembered what's going on with KOTOR remake. I literally like there's a preventative measure in my brain that just keeps it out of mind. And when I think about it, I just get very down and sad. Otherwise, I'm up, doing well. Going to get a haircut after this.
Cool.
Get all this long, shaggy shit cut off. So I'm excited about that. Going to show up to the next crossover looking fly. But great episode. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks again for taking the time. Yeah, I've been playing. I started last night Horizon, the DLC. It's pretty good. Yeah, I'm not like blown away by it at all, but it's cool to be back. To me, I'm like, I don't know what is going on here. Like, who are you? It's too long. It's just too long away. Like, it was over a year ago that I played it. I have that problem with DLC, but I'm enjoying that, and I think I'm gonna pick up Dead Island 2.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I feel like it looks pretty fun.
Very visceral.
Like I think it looks fun, and it takes place in my old backyard. So I'll have some traumatic memories while playing it as well. That'll be a lot. I
think
of fun.
That game evokes the 360 PS3 era perfectly.
I think
in a good way.
I think in a good way. Yeah, like it's linear, doesn't overstay its welcome. It's nice and tight. It kind of focuses on the strength of detail. Like the environments are a little more detailed. The gore is gross, man. Like you'll hit someone with a mallet and you'll literally see their jaw hanging off by a thread. It's disgusting, but it's amazing. They did a great job, I think. I'm very pleasantly surprised by that game.
Cool.
I saw it at $1 million, so they should be okay. Probably make their money back at least, which is good.
Definitely.
All right, my friends. Well, thanks again. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Last Stand Media, Sacred Symbols, Defining Duke, Constellation, Knockback, etc. We'll see you next time for more. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.